Okay, so let's start with closed session discussion with labor negotiators. Board direction was given. I have a quick note to read. In closed session this afternoon, the board voted unanimously on the appointment of new assistant principal of Washington Elementary School. The board is pleased to announce the hiring of Ms. Sarah McMaster as the new assistant principal of Washington Elementary School. Ms. McMaster formerly served as a literacy intervention teacher at Washington Elementary for the past 2 years. She previously served as a reading specialist at St. Philip the Apostle School in Pasadena, California, and a K-2 literacy specialist at the Lower Merion School District in Pennsylvania. Ms. McMaster has over 15 years teaching experience at the elementary level, specifically in reading and literacy intervention. Ms. McMaster earned her undergraduate degree in elementary education from Lock Haven University of Pennsylvania and her master's degree in reading from Westchester University of Pennsylvania. We look forward to Ms. McMaster's continued success at Washington Elementary School in this new role as assistant principal. Congratulations. Let's see. The approval of the agenda was unanimous 5-0, approved by David, seconded by Brad Waller. I need a motion and a second for the minutes for the June 23rd, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Motion carries 5-0. Let's see. All right, so start with reports to the board. We're going to be doing the reopening think tank presentation, so we're going to kind of break it out. I think we'll start with Dr. Keller and we'll move from there.
Yep, it'll be my presentation, everything incorporated into one. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. Just want to read kind of a little bit of a script here. The governor's order on Friday, Governor Newsom stated that in consultation with the Department of Health, all schools, public or private, are precluded from on-campus instruction if the county they are located in is on the actual state of California monitoring list for COVID-19. At this time, Los Angeles County is on this list, and therefore, if our school year started today, distance learning would be required. In order to resume on-campus instruction, a county must be off the monitoring list for 14 consecutive days. There appears to be also a waiver process in this that is still being unpackaged. I know Dr. Ferrer is going to get back to the county superintendents in the next few weeks on this potential, but we really don't know much about it other than what a brief paragraph that was stated in the language. We certainly want to thank our parents and our staff for their patience and understanding during this time. It's been said a million times. For me, at least, agility is the key process moving forward. Obviously, self-care and understanding from the adult community is very important for all of us, for our children and our kids in our community, and for whether you're a staff member or a parent. We don't have all the answers. It's hard for me to say something like that because I'm a person that likes to have answers. I'm a person that likes to get things done and move on to the next task that's good for kids, good for our community. But this is a unique time. And so, again, as we always say, when we work with people on tough problems, hard on the problems, soft on the people. To our students, we're doing everything we can to provide a much improved schooling experience for you in the fall, and we are working hard at that, and I think you'll see that today. What you will see today is an overview of what's next in the way of teaching and learning, whether you are on the hybrid learning model with a distance learning component incorporated, or in the 100% online learning model. And I'll get more into that, and so will our team. We'll get mired into the detail of that process. You will see specific and significant improvements to our 2020-2021 learning compared with our spring program. We want to make sure people watching this, that later in the meeting, of all the things you're going to hear in the detail of our program, one of the board agenda items is actually unrelated, or it's related, but unrelated, specific to this plan, and that is the recommendation by us to start the school year on August 26th, which is a week later. But the board will be voting on that. It's our recommendation, but I just didn't want people to forget that that is actually a separate agenda item later in the meeting. And what I hope parents will see today when they see the RBUSD reopening plan later this week, basically the PowerPoint tonight is just a PowerPoint version of that reopening plan. And obviously we'll adjust if, based on any direction the board gives us tonight. or today, it's not tonight. And then just understanding that the comprehensive approach we're taking, and I know some people want to get just to the punchline, which is, what is my kid's schedule? When is my kid's schedule? We all know that we're starting off in a home experience for students. And I think the point is of this plan, I just hope people are patient and willing to listen to the entire plan and not just the schedules, because we really have developed a very comprehensive plan, thanks to the reopening think tank, that really does address and maintain safety at all costs. And I think that point cannot get lost in this. And as your superintendent, that's very important to me. So with that, let's get going on the presentation that I have before you. And I'll start. And so this is just basically the cover page. I want to make sure that everybody understands that these are the organizations that actually help us in our planning. And so let me preface by saying tonight, this is going to be the longest presentation this group has ever made. And I think it's important to clarify that at the beginning, because usually our board presentations are somewhere between 7 to 10 minutes. So patience in this process. LA County Office of Education, you'll see we baked our plan for the reopening think tank around the framework given to us by LA County Office of Education. Interestingly, California Department of Public Health became even more prominent. It wasn't as prominent until Friday, because obviously this was a decision by the government was made in consultation with the California Department of Public Health, and typically we had been working with the LA County Department of Public Health. So there was a little shift. CDC is not our CDC, it's the Center for Disease Control. Obviously we take great information from them. Obviously guidance from the Department of Education, State of California, and directives regarding minimal instructional minutes and things of that nature. And then of course our friends, neighbors, and advocates at Beach Cities Health District who are going to work with us as we continue forward. And I know there is a mission there to kind of really help us eventually with, from the Beach Cities Health District, to help us with testing down the road and contact tracing. So two very important parts of our process. Moving forward, this is a big piece, is the reopening think tank. If you don't mind, I'm going to actually read the purpose. I think it's important. The purpose of the think tank is to prepare for the eventual reopening of schools and child development centers. We have opened our child development centers, so thank the think tank for getting that going. Providing facilitated weekly meetings by the superintendent of schools. RBUSD remains committed, collaborative, and proactive in evaluating all conditions and circumstances to safely and successfully reopen schools and our CDCs with support of all district stakeholders. The think tank membership, following the guidance of federal, state, and local officials, will participate in ongoing input discourse for reopening preparations. The information and input provided from the think tank will be shared with the entire Board of Education. I want to be clear about this. There were people that approached me and said, Stephen, why couldn't I be on the think tank? Honestly, if you recall, we had, but it's been put on hold, our Ensuring Safety Proactively, our ESP Safety Committee for the district. That had an application process for the participants. And we had the ability back then to have a process and to have an application process. COVID came and landed on our doorstep. And so we needed to react. We needed to create this committee quickly. I'm sorry for those that wanted to be on the committee that couldn't participate. I can assure you, speaking very honestly, we've had over 100 emails from parents with suggestions, ideas, communications. The folks that expressed some interest in being on the think tank have reached out to me, some of which gave me some ideas. When we can, we bring any ideas, as we did today, and we did at the previous meeting. We bring ideas from the community and other stakeholders to the think tank. But understand, this think tank needed to be created quickly, and it needed to be a manageable group. And every stakeholder group here is significant and embraces a piece of the thinking in the think tank. And so I would just say, if you have some other ideas moving forward, please submit them. Send them to anybody in this group, and we'll look at them and consider them. And I think that's important to note. If you look at the data, we have two data sources here that we wanted to share with you. One was from a survey of June 15th, and one was from a survey of June 26th. And then I'll get to the nuance since then. Maybe not a nuance, a change of climate since then. And so a survey for families, 57% of our families were comfortable with a 5-day return. Some people may chuckle and say that was seemingly not the best survey to send out. I would respectfully disagree, because at that time there was a potential, if nothing else at the elementary level, to at least consider it a 5-day-a-week program. And then 24% preferred hybrid, 11% preferred 100% online model. That's a family piece. Survey forward, 11 days. And then you had, we took the 5-day option off because we clearly were learning that that wasn't an option through our LA County Department of Public Health at that time. And so basically 80% of families comfortable with hybrid, 16% prefer the 100% online, and then 5% undecided. And basically in both surveys, catching the virus was obviously a significant concern. Child not being able to socialize with peers, obviously a concern, I would agree. Not being able to physically distance, that is something our CDC, our current CDC program is absolutely managing and learning to be more effective each day. Let's go to staff. Both surveys, I'll just summarize, again, 11 days apart, and then I'll make a comment after that. Basically 90% of the staff says they're ready to return to work. That says a lot about our staff. It really does. 6 staff members would take a leave in both surveys, and then 63 and then 83 said they may take a leave depending on the plans to return. And in both surveys, top 3 concerns focused on catching the virus, health concerns for self and family, all understandable, and not being able to physically distance. Obviously, since June 26, it's fair to say COVID has changed, and it's had made a larger presence in increase in testing positive rates in LA County and other parts of the state, and in hospitalizations. And so I'm not here to present the data. I don't have today's data with me, but I will tell you I think the family and staff attitudes likely have changed since then. And we can safely say because of that and for various other reasons, the governor has directed us to not return to school at this time. And so I think it's fair to say if we were to send out a new survey today, things would look or will look different. Instructional learning model. So everybody stay with me for here, because this we learned in our practice run on this. This is where I want to be clear. Forget the first bullet. That's just not even an option. Let's just move on. Oh, thank you, Dr. Alpern. Keep me honest. Okay, everybody at home, follow me here. The second 2 bullets are the most important. Forget the first one. Hybrid learning. Hybrid learning is in school and at home learning. We call the at home in the hybrid model distance learning. So there's hybrid in school and then the hybrid distance learning. Those are one and the same. When we say 100% online learning, that is I'm going to read the script, full-time enrollment and instruction using schools PLP, which we're going to explain in great detail later, courses with monitoring and support by RBUSD teachers. Obviously, we have RBUSD teachers in both models, except you'll see in the 100% online learning model, which is the separate, where you're not coming to school, you're not part of the hybrid when we're allowed to return, and it's more aligned to more of this independent experience model using the schools PLP with support from RBUSD teachers. And so with that, who I'd like to introduce first to, these are the 5 framework lenses that we use from LA County Department of Public, LA County Office of Education. The reopening schools framework that they provided us, and you'll see in this, we broke it down in 5 subcommittees, if you will: health and safety, social-emotional support systems, family and community engagement, operations, and instruction. And so what we're going to do is present each of these, and I know some people want to get right to instruction, but there's a lot of depth and a lot more information about safety and our program support along the way. So with that, health and safety is first, and that's our Executive Director of Special Education, Ms. Silberling.
Thank you for having me today. The health and safety measures are all protocols that are in accordance with the directives that have been given to us by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. And they are in place right now to ensure that our students and our staff are safe and protected when we return to campuses. The first measure will be looking at screenings when we enter campuses, and there will be both active and passive screenings for both students and staff. Passive measures will include Screening surveys completed prior to arrival with proof upon entry on a mobile device. Active measures may include things like temperature checks upon entry. The use of active or passive measures will depend upon the campus layout and the student populations at each of our sites. We've been working closely with our school site principals to determine what is the best option for their site and their student population to ensure that there's no bottlenecking and that we get students onto campus safely without large crowds. Second, our campuses at this time will be closed to visitors and volunteers. We are adhering strictly to the directives for social distancing as well as mask requirements. Later, you're going to hear some of the exemptions when I speak about our students with disabilities and the mask exemptions for those students, as well as in the social distancing directives. When you get into the operations, Annette, Dr. Alpern will go into further detail about how we are adhering to the 6-foot distancing on our campuses. There will be additional PPE and has been purchased for specified staff who, based on our student needs, cannot keep a wide distance to ensure that they're safe. For those staff members, that includes our instructional assistants, our health clerks, and our nurses, and we have very specific additional PPE already purchased for them. Our health offices are currently being reorganized to separate the sick and the well with the appropriate supervision, and when possible, all health office services will come to the student to minimize student traffic on the campus. All cleaning and disinfecting products that have been purchased do meet the LA County Department of Public Health requirements, and they will be used frequently, available in classrooms, and cleaning will occur both in classrooms, restrooms, and all other common spaces on a regular schedule. We will continue our partnerships with Beach Cities Health District to ensure that our initiatives around healthy living and mental health continue to be provided to students, and they're done so in a virtual manner in adherence with the no visitors and volunteers. We also continue to work closely with the Redondo Beach Police Department to ensure that our campuses are safe.
And so what I'm going to do after each section, if it's okay with you, I'm putting up the board member question and answer for you specifically, because we're maintaining physical distancing, and Jessica will leave the area here and go outside. So if you have any questions specific to this slide, this will pop up after each section.
All right, I've got 2 questions, I guess. To make it easier for you to hear me. How will the mask wearing be enforced on campus? Is there consequences for people that don't wear masks, that kind of thing? Because that's a political issue as well, but if it's our requirement, how do we make sure that it's enforced?
At this point in time, the Los Angeles Department of County Health has made it clear that masks are a requirement and they are required. So to be on a campus, you will have to wear them. The exemptions, I should say, to that are around students with disabilities and their tolerance based on their disability and their behavior. And there are different types of masks that I'll speak to a little bit later that they would be able to use that would be acceptable. But it is very clear that we are all required to wear masks on
I guess I'm
campuses.
thinking more of the willful
Yeah.
non-compliance.
Yeah,
What do
and
we do?
so-
Is it the teacher's responsibility? Yeah.
Well, it'll be, I mean, obviously what we would share up front, and I think the public, or at least you're hearing it already, is we're going to have to make it very clear. If you are, clearly have a desire not to wear a mask, we would encourage you to look at option 2, which you'll hear about more today, and that's okay. We're okay with that. So for people that just say, heck no, I'm not going to wear a mask, we'd encourage them to look at the 100% online model.
And then the other question, you didn't touch on it really, but in the governor's briefing, he said that teachers would be tested, half the teachers every month, so that all teachers have been tested. Do we know any details on that? Who's paying for it, how it works, or anything?
We don't
Or-
have any specific details. I will say that Dr. Keller and myself are working closely with Beach Cities Health District on some options for testing for both staff and students, but we don't have many details on that at this point in time.
Right.
And I know that we, as a collaborative group with the superintendents in the beach cities, Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo, are working with Beach Cities Health District and UCLA Health to help us in this testing process. But that is still in the process of designing and funding and those layers. But I think we will have an opportunity there.
Good.
Jessica, could you expound a little more on the the pre-screening options,
Yes.
if someone wants to know what constitutes that, and then what would be done for students coming onto the campus in terms of temperature checks.
So at this point in time, what we're looking at is partnering with Children's Hospital LA is one group that we've been looking at for an app. It's actually it's a website, not an app that you would be able to access, and it goes through symptoms that we would be working with them to mirror the guidelines from the LA County Department of Public Health. But on those, you would take it at home, and upon entry, it shows a green if you have passed those screening measures. If you get a red, then you would be directed to stay home and contact the site immediately. For staff, it would be to contact your site administrator and or designee immediately. For our elementary age students, the passive measure will be assumption of coming to school will be laid out that you do not meet certain symptom checks that would be done by you and your parent, but upon entry, we do have the no-touch thermometers that the CDC, or Child Development Center, has been using right now, that those students would be taking upon entry gates. And Annette has walked every campus with our principals to delineate specific entry gates that based on, you will be assigned a gate so you will know where you're entering. And for our elementary campuses, we will be taking temperatures. We will also have a designated space for students who don't have mobile devices or who forget their phone that day, for them to have the more active screening measures taken before you can enter campus. Same for staff. If for some reason they didn't have their phone or it wasn't working, there will be a full active booth, for lack of a better word, for them to enter the campus.
Great. Thank you. We'll move forward. Thank you for letting us insert that slide there. It makes it easy for all of us. Also joining us today is Dr. Anthony Taranto, our Executive Director of Student Services, to cover the social and emotional support systems.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. And so our subcommittee for the social emotional support systems, every time we met, we kept going back to this fundamental idea that emotional safety is the foundation for all learning and success. And I know in years past, we've always talked about Bloom's taxonomy, but now as we're transitioning back into our schools, we're really looking more so at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so with that in mind, we really want to focus on promoting the whole child development, improving school climate, and enhancing equity of opportunity for all students. And we talked about incorporating more of the social emotional learning curriculum across K-12. We currently use Mind Up with our students in grades K through 5, Second Step in 6 through 8, and we're in the process of examining programs for consideration in grades 9 through 12. In fact, this week I'll be meeting with a group of counselors from across K-12 so we can begin to prepare for plans for transitioning back in, but also developing those plans, sequencing them out so that way we can look at how we can deliver them to our students, as well as evaluating what we can use for our secondary students at RUHS. We also want to follow at MTSS, pyramid of support, to identify and support learners who are disengaged, chronically absent, or special populations such as our EL, foster youth, and homeless. We want to be very intentional in reaching out to those students in particular to make sure that they are engaged in learning, they have access to the content and curriculum, and if they need any additional support such as a Wi-Fi hotspot, we want to be able to provide that for them so they can fully engage in the new learning model. We talked about building the capacity of staff to address barriers to learning and promote healthy development. That would require us providing mental health and trauma supports plus trauma-informed training to staff. So again, in working with that group, we want to prepare our teachers for what to expect when they come back. Even though it will be distance learning initially, we want to make sure that they're well equipped to identify students who are in need, as also to support our staff and to provide them with self-care tips as well. We want to promote social and emotional development and enhance the resiliency and protected buffers in our students. Doing so, we'll look at implementing restorative practices, juvenile diversion, and positive behavior interventions and supports at the secondary level. In fact, our 3 secondary schools, we're working with Lakeco again, specifically in year 2 for PBIS. I know, Brad, you asked a question a second ago regarding the masks. I think that's where on campuses, we want to be diligent. Obviously, we want to reinforce that masks are required, but we also want to be punitive. I think we need to work within what we have and implement restorative practice with our students to make sure that they are adhering to the guidelines. We want to coordinate virtual assemblies to maintain student and staff recognition, tradition, and connectedness with the school site. I know in a lot of conversations I've had with our committee as well as other parents and community members, that connected piece and engagement, we keep coming back to that. And so in working with our sites, we want to make sure that these virtual experiences replicate what would normally take place on our school grounds. And then we want to work with our community partners such as Beach Cities Health District and South Bay Flames Connected to provide families with social and emotional well-being support in the household. And so that could be through a series of speaker series or Wednesday chats, anything that we can do to support parents in the household, because that's another issue that we had heard on our end, and helping parents coordinate schedules and working with their children, I think will benefit all of us in the end. And we're also going to work with South Bay Children's Health Center again this year to provide teletherapy to all of our students who are in need across all of K-12.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Toronto. I have the privilege of introducing our newest doctor on the team, and our newest doctor is Dr. Susan Wiles, Executive Director of Ed Services. Excuse me.
Services.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to get my money's worth out of this UCLA degree if it kills me. So I'm here to talk about our family and community engagement subgroup, and I want to thank Dr. Keller and the board for engaging so many of the community members up front as part of the reopening think tank. I also want to thank all of our parents and our family and our staff for completing the surveys. And I know oftentimes people complete surveys and they send them in and they hope somebody reads them. And I want to assure every single person in this room and at home, I read every word. I read them multiple times. And so one of the things you're going to find later on when we talk about instruction is we really tried to take what parents were telling us, what they needed, and incorporate that into our plan. We also want to thank everybody for being so open for our town hall meeting, which is going to occur next week on July 28th, where we're going to be able to fully bring everyone to the table and talk about our reopening plans. Our next step will be designing and making sure we have one source that's comprehensive for families and parents to gain information that they need. And then we also want to go about designing a centralized feedback system. So parents can, if they don't know who to contact, if they don't know if something applies to their principal or their teacher or their PTA president, that they can reach out to us and then we can help get them to the right person who can answer their questions. We're also establishing protocols for our site leaders to gather information around families. A lot of families aren't always sharing the same last name, so cohorting students by A to K and L to Z may not always be the best way to do that. So we want to make sure we gather that information. But we also know that there are families out there who are working together for childcare needs, and we need to gather that information too to make sure that we're able to help them out. And then finally, we want to go back and work with our PTAs to make sure that we do a comprehensive needs assessment to find out what education our parents and families need in terms of helping them establish roles for their students, roles for their family. We want to clearly be able to communicate and teach them what our roles are as the school and how we can help them to best support. Do they need technology training? Do we need to help students build their executive functioning skills? So we want to make sure that we know exactly what our parents and families need in terms of education going forward.
Any questions for Dr. Wiles?
Actually, you addressed the two questions I had about the blended families and family group pods, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, I think that's really going to be important. And, you know, what's the phrase? It takes a village. This is a time where it's going to take a village. So we need to be very mindful of that for families.
Thank you, Dr. Wiles. I'm going to have Dr. Alpern, our Deputy Superintendent of Administrative Services, come up. And I also want to note that we did add a slide just this morning to this presentation, so it doesn't fit the look of all the others. Certainly don't want to accuse Ricardo of not doing his job, but this is so up to date that Dr. Alpern inserted it. It'll be the next slide after operations. So Dr. Alpern, take it away.
Yes, thank you. The information that was added just came out within the last 24 hours. So the group that I worked with, we really did a lot in combination with the Safety and Health Subcommittee. And so operations really is like the support of the safety and the health. And the thing to note is whenever we return, whether it's employees or for students, every school campus is going to have new signage and new system of operations in place. So the return will not be the same. It's going to be a new normal. And operations is going to support that. As Jessica said, students will be assigned to a particular entrance gate. That will become their location to enter and exit the school. It will be the same. And primarily, as you know, we walk the campuses. with each principal. They're going to be assigned by the location of their classroom. So, you know, if you're a student at RUHS and you're going to be your first classroom is maybe a math classroom, you're not going to be entering down by the Science and Industrial Arts building. So you'll be assigned according to your schedule on the day. We are putting in directional signage for one-way hallways so that we have improved and safer traffic flow. That will become the norm. Where there is a need for two-way traffic flow, that will be identified as well. As we walked those campuses, many of the principals were actually relieved and had said, well, we're just going to take this as an opportunity to really improve our traffic flow that we probably could have used even pre-COVID. Desks will be facing forward again. That will be appropriately distanced per whatever the county health guidelines are when we physically return. Currently, that's 6 feet apart. And we have hand washing and sanitizing in classrooms and bathrooms that will occur throughout the day, and there will be schedules for that. Parents and students will receive clear directions before the start of the school year or before the start of the return physical in-person learning to alleviate any kinds of questions or concerns about, as Brad was asking, mask wearing, washing of the hands, use of the bathrooms, how to get meals, etc. So all of that will be provided to parents well before they physically return. And then there's kind of two things around athletics. We've got the LA County Department of Public Health, which provides us with the guidelines about how we handle things safely. And then we have CIF, which released some information. You can take it to the next slide if you'd like, Dr. Keller. And what the CIF does is, you know, they're responsible for the organization of sports. So the state CIF announced something yesterday morning, and then in the afternoon, our Southern Section CIF had a press conference. This is a document that was provided by Southern Section CIF. Just listen to my words before you look at the slide, because if you just look at the slide, it may not make sense to you. So there are 3 seasons in high school athletics. What the CIF has done is they have taken those 3 seasons and created 2 seasons of high school sports. The first season will begin with practices, if possible, in December. The season will go from early January and/or late December until March. The second season of sports will go from mid-March until late-ish in May. And what they have done, there were many other documents provided by CIF, but basically what they did was they've provided dates for playoffs and other end-of-season competitions. So for those of you that know high school sports, if you look at this, you're going to see that there are sports that were obviously not traditionally held during these seasons. There will be some choices that will need to be made for some students that participate in more than one sport. They've also provided a lot of suspensions of particular CIF rules, the main one being that kids that participate in club athletics will continue to be able to play in club sports as well as high school sports. Mr. Saltzman at the high school is on top of this. He's emailed the coaches, the school administration is on top of it, but I wanted just to provide you with this larger overview because athletics and sports, is a huge piece of the high school experience for probably half of our students at RUHS.
So you know what the next slide is. Any questions?
Sure, I've got a couple. With regards to facilities, the fact that everything's being compressed, and now you've got boys and girls water polo, boys and girls volleyball, soccer and lacrosse, all at the same time. How do we handle facilities used for practices and games and all that other stuff?
So it's a great question. There are kind of 2 answers to that. One has to do with the LA County Department of Public Health guidelines, that 13-page document that came out about a week or 2 ago. In that document, it states clearly that no school facilities will be used by non-instructional groups or organizations. So, for instance, our pool. Generally, there's a lot of public use of our pool. There's Beach City Swim, there's other organizations that use our pool. So if the pool is not accessible to those other organizations, it would open up time slots for, let's say, 5 levels of water polo to use our pool. Having said that, there's some work that's going to have to be done at a local level for all schools, not just Redondo Union, but for all schools. No one has, unlimited facilities. So there will have to be adjustments made. I don't want to get ahead of myself and give you what those possibilities are, so that will play out.
And I just want to be mindful that there were sports teams that had their seasons entirely canceled.
Absolutely, last spring.
And if their season now coincides with somebody who did have a season, and we have to choose, I would take that into account personally.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Southern Section, Rob Wygod, who's the head of the Southern Section CIF, spoke to that yesterday at the press conference.
Okay.
And, just like we've been working really hard, they've been working really hard since the close as well. And they want to provide every possible opportunity for students to have a season. Again, the health is going to, of the larger community is going to play out. And so, the goal is to provide a sports season for every student athlete this year and look forward on a go forward basis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. For those parents whose children participate in non-CIF sports, so they wouldn't be listed here,
Yeah.
beach volleyball, I don't know if surfing is CIF or not, who should they contact if they have questions about their particular?
So I think if they're participating in a non-CIF sport, that is going to be part and parcel of looking at all of our programs, like kids that are participating in PE, kids that are participating in sort of non-traditional, non-core academic classes. And so I think we still have some work to do. I know the Educational Services Department will be working, it's primarily with RUHS, and when there's maybe greater clarification, we can include that. I don't think we have that yet.
No.
And maybe that's something we can make sure we account for in planning for our town hall next week.
And one other question. So based on this is obviously a best-case scenario that
Yes.
these sports practices would be able to happen in December, sports in January, not something we can control. But we are going to still plan at the high school level for those students who participate in these sports that take it as a class. They will still be able to sign up for that class?
As far as I know,
Okay.
the students who are signed up for six-period athletics
just may not be
will have six-period
soccer,
athletics on
say.
their schedule.
Okay. And just another comment, I really appreciate, we talk a lot about operations, about what it's going to be like when we go back to school, realizing that that's not where we are right now. Clearly, when we do go back to school,
Yep.
we'll probably need to revisit it, but I just wanted to thank you for taking all this time to go through those documents with a fine-tooth comb and know that it's always going to, and now there's new guidelines that we received that we're still going to have to keep adding to, so thank you for
Sure.
that.
Thank you, Dr. Alpern. While we get ready for the next speakers, I want to tell you that we had our reopening think tank meeting this morning. And just to let parents and families and staff know that the think tank doesn't always agree with some things presented to them. And so literally after the meeting at 11:45, to the time it took to put this online, there have been changes to these slides to accommodate clarity. We want clarity. That's very important to us. And we know that this is a working document that we have before us. But that being said, it goes to show you how quickly we react to information and communication we receive. So with that, I know there's a lot of interested families out there to hear from the next group, and that's Dr. Wesley, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and Dr. Wilds will be joining her momentarily. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keller. Could you flip to the next slide, please? So I'm here to talk about our schedules, primarily our first option, which is our hybrid model. But before I do that, I do want to take a minute to thank the think tank subcommittee for looking at several different models and really coming up with the most optimal hybrid model for our students. And we had our union leadership on that subcommittee, Monica Joyce and Sarah Robinson, Alta Vista principal Dale Hillier. We had Lisa Ville, our Adams Middle School principal, Jens Brandt, our high school principal, Teresa Van Duzen, our CDC director, and Miss Lily Cho, our assistant superintendent of ed services, and myself. So I'm going to discuss in detail the hybrid model, and what it looks like, what school will look like when we begin in August, and sample schedules from the student perspective. We will share with you another option for students or parents who have no intentions of returning to the school campus, and that'll be discussed in later slides. But I just want to be clear about the hybrid model. This option is for students who do intend to come back to the school campus as soon as the LAC-DPH allows us to. And these students will be assigned to a teacher, as they typically are, and on a roster. And that teacher will be responsible for delivering the instruction to the students. The hybrid model, we will begin with we'll begin with a distance learning, 100% distance learning portion of the hybrid model. But it does also include face-to-face instruction. So ideally, when we do return, students would be coming for part of the week, and they'd be learning distance learning for part of the week. But we are starting off 100% distance learning, and I will go into what that looks like. Again, instructions provided by the classroom teacher for which they are assigned. There will be a daily schedule for which I'm going to go over, morning meetings, contact with that teacher live via WebEx, Google Meets, and there will be daily required attendance and participation. This is going to be a change from the spring model. Students will be expected to log on every single day and engage with the teacher and have attendance taken. There will be traditional grading, and we also will have dedicated tutorial and intervention. So when considering models, we came up with priorities that we felt were important to enhance student learning opportunities. And some of these considerations included consistency in the form of a schedule that engages students while they're on and off campus. Now I know, again, we're going to go into full 100% distance learning, but we have to remember when we do pivot to the hybrid portion where students are on campus a few days and off campus a few days, we want there to be consistency with that schedule, whether you're on or off campus. But also for the sake of consistency with sleeping patterns and other daily routines that are important to students and families. That's also important for the social emotional aspect that Dr. Toronto discussed. We really want to optimize the teacher-student in-person contact. There are a lot of different hybrid models out there, believe it or not. You may have seen some from other districts, and many of them have a full-day distance learning day with little to no contact with the teacher on that day. And the model that we are going to present does show live interaction with teachers every day, 5 days a week, which does increase the student-teacher contact time throughout the school year. The distance learning will look different than it did last spring, and so Dr. Wilds will go into that a little bit more. And the model, again, is going to be a change for the students in terms of the expectation of their level of engagement. As you can see, there are a variety of advantages to this model, one being that we have smaller class sizes when the students do come back, about half the size of the class, maybe even less, which means there's a greater concentration of time for students. Also, again, the schedule does maximize that in-person contact, and it allows us to pivot into hybrid or 100% distance learning. Going into the instruction while at home, students are going to be engaged with their teachers for about 75 to 90 minutes a day, depending on the level, the grade, et cetera. And there needs to be some flexibility with the teachers in terms of how they deliver that instruction. So we're going to look more into that as we engage in the schedules. So let's look at a schedule. Since we are going back into 100% distance learning, if we go to the next slide. So here it is, the hybrid model in 100% distance learning. And we're going to look at it from the lens of elementary. If you're an elementary student, this is what you would be expected to do each day, starting on August 26th. So you should be up by 8 o'clock, dressed, ready, because you're going to be live on camera and ready to go. Eat your breakfast, get out your Chromebook, log on. By 8:30, will be engaging in a morning meeting with your teacher. The teacher will take attendance. The teacher will connect with all the students, and the teacher may push out a social emotional learning lesson or some type of activity to create some level of connectedness. And then at that point, instruct the students to get ready for the first block of instruction, which would be English language arts or social studies. And so you'll see here that there's a block of time of about an hour and a half. And in that block of time, the expectation is not for students to be engaged with their teacher that entire time. Rather, what we learned from the surveys that were discussed earlier is that small group instruction, again, parent feedback, teacher feedback, that small group instruction is the most ideal, the most optimal way in to teach students, especially pushing out new learning, new content. So the idea here is just to build a block of time for the teachers to engage students for a minimum number of minutes, about 20 minutes, and they can put the students into small groups and they can engage them. They could also do whole group lessons and then break it into small groups and go further. But that'll be for them to decide, but there will be some minimum level of instructional contact with the students. Then we built in a break for both the staff and the students. And then we jump into another block of math science, and it's the same concept of small group instruction being the ideal, again, with the teacher having the ability to engage all the students at the same time if they wanted to. So for instance, if the teacher wanted to do a lesson on a reading comprehension, she or he can do that whole group, and then she could say, okay, cohort A, you stay logged on for about 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to go further into that lesson. Cohort B, log back on in about 20 minutes. But the expectation is that students are working for that time slot in some capacity. Then teachers would be engaging in their duty-free lunch along with students having a lunch break. And then this is where students would then be engaging in independent work assigned to the teacher, either through the Google Classroom or some other direction. And teachers would have the ability to ask students to log back in so that they can receive intervention, whether it be because we've pre-assessed them and we've determined some need, or because a lesson was being taught and the teacher can see that the student is struggling with that concept and needed further instruction, further support. What we wanted to note is that there are minimum instructional minutes that have to be met, and that would be done both through the interaction with the teacher as well as the assignments that are assigned to the students. So students will be expected to continue to work independently for the day. And then you see at the very bottom of the schedule that we would be pushing out enrichment lessons that are pre-recorded for students that are similar to lessons that they would have received should they still be on campus. If we could just jump to now the secondary view of that. The secondary view is pretty similar, although there are some changes. The Monday, when we're going to go into the hybrid a little bit more detail, but on the Monday, you see that the secondary students are engaging with all of their teachers for about 30 minutes each period. But then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, they would be going to the block period. And some people may ask, well, why is it that they're going to 2, 4, 6, 2 days in a row, and then 1, 3, 5, 2 days in a row, as opposed to alternating? And the reason that is because when we pivot into the hybrid, and we have the cohort A and the cohort B, that is consistent with that hybrid model. So that goes back to that schedule being consistent, alleviates confusion. So you'll see on the next slide when we go there that the cohort A would typically be on Tuesday, Thursday, and Wednesday, Friday is B, but that's why it provides that consistency. So similar to the elementary model, we have a block of time not intended for direct instruction the whole time. There'd be a minimum number of instructional minutes for each period that the teacher engages with students either live or through pre-recorded lessons. And then the student would go on to the next period. And during that block of time, the teacher would be available for any types of questions or additional support, et cetera. We have built in a 0 period and a 7th period for those few students who do take those periods. And if you're in a 7th period, you'd be instructed to log on at that time. After the lunch break, similar to elementary, in order to make sure we have more than the instructional minutes required, we do want to have students would be expected to log back on and continue to do work. They could be invited to participate in intervention or do independent work, that'll be up to the teacher, and the teacher will direct the students accordingly. I want to point out again, students will be expected to log in at the beginning of each period for about 15 to 20 minutes at a minimum to engage in attendance taking, check in. There could even be some form of social emotional lesson or push out, but that is going to be a change from the spring, and that's how students would be marked present for that period and that day. So now we're going to look at the hybrid model in terms of when we do pivot back to where students are actually physically on campus. If we were to look at elementary, and it's the same with secondary, going with the idea of students being assigned to a teacher or teachers, and they're on a roster, students will be divided into two cohorts, A and B, and those cohorts are based on the alphabet of their last name. And we did that so that students could be together. So whether you have a child in elementary, middle, or high, if you do it by last name, you're sending your students on the same day. So A, Tuesday, Thursday, B, Wednesday, Friday. Now the difference between the two levels, elementary and secondary, is the Monday. And on Monday, elementary students will be alternating their attendance to school, cohort A and then B, A, B, etc. And we did that because, again, we want to optimize the time that students have contact with teachers. And you can see these blocks of times that teachers are engaging with students, and as well, students at home will have a minimum number of time engagement with that teacher as well as pre-recorded lessons, etc., pushed out. You see that there's a break, and then more instructional minutes, and then you will look at the lunchtime. At the time of which students take a lunch, students will have a grab-and-go lunch, and that will be provided on campus for those who request one. This allows us to meet the the physical distancing requirements, which would be quite challenging to do during a lunch period, as you can imagine. So that is why we went with this schedule. So students would grab their lunch, they would go home, and they would be expected to continue engaging in learning after they finish their lunch. Moving to the secondary model, similar to elementary, but the Monday is where we have the difference again. Monday is the traditional stack day, as we know it for at least Adams in the high school, but it is a day where they engage with every single teacher online, live for 30 minutes or about 30 minutes, and this will allow the teacher to engage in a flipped model, a flipped classroom, where they can push out. And when I say engagement, what does that mean? The teacher can push out learning objectives for the week, content for the week, again, some type of social emotional lesson. It could be an actual delivery of content. So that's what would be happening on Monday, and then the students would alternate coming on campus and being at home during those periods per the schedule posted on the screen. Like elementary, they would then have a grab and go, they would go home, and they would be expected to participate in learning and assignments, etc., independent work. At the end of the day, although students could be asked to check in to participate in intervention or some type of mini lessons on the day that they're supposed to be at school if they needed to. So those are the details of the hybrid and the 100%. So I don't know if we should take questions for that before we push into the second option to keep it from confusion, or should we move forward? Okay, we'll keep it going. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to have Dr. Wilds come up and discuss the second option, but we just want to be very clear that the second option is completely different from the hybrid 100% learning model, in which students are assigned to one teacher and off they go individual. They're not coming on campus at all for the duration of them being in this program. So, Dr. Wilds.
Thank you, Dr. Wesley. So for families who want to elect to continue their learning at home, They don't foresee wanting to come back on campus. Then we have option 2, which is online learning, very similar to an independent study model. The main difference is that students are getting their core instruction through an online program. So I want to be very clear. In hybrid distance start, the instruction is coming from the classroom teacher. Through the online model, the instruction is coming through a program. Very similar to our independent study program, very similar to our students at the high school who are utilizing Acellus right now. They're getting their instruction through 100% through the videos, through texts that they read, and activities that they do through the program. So the online, families who opt for option 2, online learning, sorry, my glasses are still fogged up. Option 2 will be, and their students will be enrolled in all of their core courses through the school's PLP digital curriculum, which I'm going to go through in just a minute. We're going to be releasing the course list for elementary, for middle, and for high school, and we'll talk about that in just a minute as well. Students will work and learn independently. Their work in the program, their attendance, and their engagement in the program is going to be completely monitored by an RBUSD teacher. And then we want to supplement a little bit with some more social and emotional monitoring, lessons as needed, some coaching through the program from our teachers. These teachers will be able to work with the students to establish a daily schedule. We're not publishing one because it will differ by student, by child. We'll be requiring daily attendance and their participation, which we can monitor through the program as well as online attendance taking. And there will be traditional grading. The grading, however, will also be done through Schools PLP. So let's talk about Schools PLP for just a moment. So this is an item that we're going to be putting forward to the board in just a little bit, but we thought it fit here, so I wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit more. This summer, we had a team of elementary, middle school, high school teachers and administrators, as well as myself and the Ed Services team, start combing through what's available out there in terms of digital curriculum. I'm sure no one is surprised. Everybody and their brother wants to sell you something if they haven't already reached out to you. And all of these companies are trying to pivot as quickly as they can, right? So there's a lot of new programs that are popping up, and there's a lot of historical programs that have been around for several years. So we originally looked at Schools PLP. We looked at Apex. We looked at Acellus, which is currently in use in our summer school. We looked at Edgenuity, and then we looked at Schools PLP. And first, we were looking at it through the lens of students who would be enrolling in 100% instruction. We were looking to see if it offered K-12 options. We were looking to make sure that they had all of the core courses covered. We wanted to make sure that there were electives available for students. We wanted to make sure there was CTE. We were looking for world languages, and we wanted to make sure that there was credit recovery available as well. We particularly were also looking to make sure that the delivery of instruction was a lesson design model that we could support. We wanted to make sure there were multiple modalities. Students had the ability to read text. They had the ability to have text be read to them. We wanted to make sure that there were videos embedded for students that can pause. We wanted to make sure that any of these programs required frequent action on behalf of the student. I don't want to surprise you, but kids like to skip ahead. So we wanted to make sure we could force the learning. We didn't want students jumping to the end and trying to guess their way through an end of assessment. It was incredibly important that any courses we offered were obviously A to G approved and that they were approved by the NCAA. We were looking to make sure that a program was available to offer AP courses, and Schools PLP does that utilizing the UC Scout curriculum, which we were big fans of. We wanted to make sure that the courses were aligned to California standards, that they were customizable, meaning that we could, if we had students who needed accommodations and they needed additional supports, we were able to go embed that in the program, and the teacher was able to monitor and change as necessary. We didn't want a kind of one-size-fits-all. Here you go. We wanted to be able to adapt it. We also wanted a program that provided parents and students immediate feedback. We wanted a program that for a parent could log in and say, you know what, tomorrow let's take more than 90 seconds to finish that lesson. We wanted a parent to have a lot of data because this learning was happening in the classroom, in the home. That being said, we also wanted a program that we could pivot and provide to all of our teachers to help support hybrid and blended learning. Under hybrid, our teachers just have less contact time with our students. And one of the things that we heard is that they needed additional resources to design lessons, to deliver assessments, to support our kids. And schools PLP, on the other side, also supports blended learning. The digital curriculum supports this blended hybrid instruction, and they do that by providing teachers from customizable lessons from over 550 curricular providers across the United States. Teachers can go in, they can edit, they can revise, they can delete, they can add. One of the things that was critically important, particularly in our secondary teachers, is that if a teacher's customizing a lesson and he or she uploads a video of herself or content that they have created, it remains the intellectual property of the teacher and not schools PLP. And that was a big indicator for us. We wanted to make sure that the work that our teachers do remain with our teachers. It provides remediation and acceleration options. Obviously, again, our kids are with the contact time with our teachers can be limited, so we wanted to make sure we gave teachers additional remediation and option programming that students could utilize when they're not in front of the teacher. It also, we heard from a lot of our parents, particularly our English language learner families, that it was very difficult to support their students if the home language was not English. So this program has over 68 languages that all of the text can be translated into, and so that was incredibly important for us. It also has customizable accommodations for students, and it provides immediate parent and student feedback. So we wanted to make this available to our teachers to opt in to use it as much or as little as they'd like in order specifically to address, specifically to address some of those practice skills that we don't necessarily want our teachers taking the face time to address and cover. It also has an incredible data monitoring system. So again, teachers can see how long, where we need to be concerned about, what other accommodations we need to make. And that our teachers felt that schools PLP was the easiest to get up and running. Next slide, please. Okay, so I have probably the biggest question that we get in educational services. How will 2020-21 hybrid distance learning be different from the spring? And Dr. Wesley touched on it as she was going through the schedules. But we wanted to create a very, very clear visual for our families and our community as to what is different. It is going to be different. I can tell you with absolute certainty what I was doing on March 12th. I was preparing for a PD day on March 13th. And around 4:30, suddenly we were preparing for distance learning. That's crisis response. Our teachers were in crisis response. They were coming to school one day, they were suddenly having to learn how to be online teachers. Even in the world of teaching, online teaching has been reserved for higher education, and suddenly we had to learn how to do it with 5-year-olds. So I want to make sure throughout this, I'm going to talk about our teachers in the end, they deserve an incredible amount of credit for the work and the perseverance that they did in March through June. But March and June was reactive, right? We were reacting to a health pandemic. We had limited time for planning, limited time for training our teachers. We didn't even know what we necessarily needed them to be trained in, to tell you the truth. We had to figure that out. In a hybrid learning when we open on August, we have purposely designed, mapped out, scheduling, instructional design, and professional development for our teachers. In the spring, we had a lot of flexibility with our students. Our students and our families were in crisis, and we afforded them the flexibility to engage as much as they could. That's not so much in the fall. We have a schedule, and I think you can tell from Dr. Wesley, we have a very planned school day for our students. We heard our parents. They want structure, they want a schedule, and we're coming with one. In the spring, we were under a hold harmless grading. That's not going to happen in the fall. Traditional grading is returning. In the spring, we were focused on kind of review. We knew our kids, we knew them well, we knew their strengths, we knew their weaknesses. We had taught the majority of our essential standards by that point of the year. So we were focused on review, and we were really kind of restricted in our ability to teach new concepts because of the materials that our kids just happened to have taken home in their backpacks that day. That's tough. In the fall, we're focusing on grade level. We're focusing on the rigorous standards. We're utilizing year-long planning guides to make sure that we start the year strong. We don't want to start the year necessarily remediating. The research that came out of Hurricane Katrina tells us students do better if we start the year in rigorous grade level standards and we supplement when we need to. In the spring, the materials that we were using, we had Chromebooks. In grades 3 through 12, second graders had them in the classroom, which we quickly tried to fix. But we were relying on emailed lesson plans and traditional sources and the workbooks that kids had in their desks. This fall, we're looking at Chromebooks in 2nd through 12th grade. We are looking at iPads in kindergarten through 1st grade. We're looking at providing all of our students, whether you are online or hybrid, with access to digital curriculum, textbooks, supplemental digital platforms, because there's even more out there that currently support the good curriculum that we've already adopted. And then we've got increased learning management systems. In the spring, we had intermittent live contact with the classroom teacher. In the fall, daily live contact and engagement with the classroom teacher, coupled with direct classroom instruction multiple times a day. In the spring, we're utilizing something called office hours. I don't know how many of you remember your college days, how many of you accessed office hours. It was infrequent. Unless someone told you, I will see you at office hours at 2 o'clock, nobody was stopping by at office hours, and that's what we found in the spring. So you'll see on the schedule, office hours are gone. Now we have daily intervention and tutorial time because we do know a lot of our students are going to need more one-on-one small group instruction, and that's what we heard from our teachers that work. We had social and emotional supports that were currently in use in the classroom in the spring, but we're increasing them with universal social and emotional lessons and supports in the fall. Our designated IEP services will continue. In the spring, we had some parent and family resources that we were pushing out to parents, but it was hard to even tell what all of our families really needed. And now we are going to be purposeful. As I spoke earlier, we will be doing a needs assessment for our parent and family to support our education platform to make sure that we are supporting the duties and responsibilities that students need to take on at home, that families need to take on, and that we as the school need to take on as well. And then finally, we weren't taking attendance in the spring. Those days are over. Attendance will be taken daily at elementary, every period at the secondary level. And not only will you be taking attendance, we're going to be monitoring your engagement as well. Because, again, we don't want to assume a student's just going to log on and take attendance and then we never see them again for the next 90 minutes. So we'll be monitoring both of those. As we go through and kind of answer questions about the two, one of the questions that I get asked the most frequently is, again, how will it be different? And what would you choose? And I want to clearly state that I believe in our teachers. I believe in our administrators. I believe in the district office. I believe in our TOSAs to coach our teachers. The learning, the professional development, and the research our teachers have been engaging in this summer, they're ready for hybrid. So I want to just applaud the work that they're doing this summer. They are eager and they are excited to get our kids back.
Open it up to questions.
I have a couple of questions. First is, could you expound just a little bit about the schedules? I noticed that the schedules for both the, on the hybrid, both the version that has students coming to school and the 100% distant version on hybrid is the same schedule. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
In terms of the periods that they're attending at the secondary level?
In terms of the periods.
Yeah, so.
And then to Dr. Wilds, on the online version, if you could talk about, is that available to special ed or special needs students? Sure. And how that would work?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I just want to be clear about, the schedules, especially the student perspective. These are, we are waiting for our unions to ratify the schedules. So, we right now are speaking in terms of sample schedules, and then the board would be approving them. But I think really it comes down to the secondary schedule and the periods of which the students are attending is what you're asking, Mike.
Yes, that's
and,
right.
We can look at it. Let's go just to the hybrid. Yeah, that one. So in terms, this is the model where students are actually coming to school physically 2 days a week. So let's start with Monday. On Monday, at the secondary level, both middle schools, it's continuation and high school. Sorry, not continuation, high school. The students will be logging on for each of those periods for about 30 minutes with their teacher and engaging in instruction or push out, et cetera. Now, Tuesday through Friday, if you're in cohort A, you're physically on campus, and if you're in cohort B, you're at home. So let's talk about an actual lesson. Let's say I'm in Algebra 1, and the teacher is teaching how to solve quadratic equations, and I'm in period 2, and the teacher is saying, okay, I have cohort A in front of me, cohort B, you're logged on. I'm going to show you both simultaneously this direct instruction on how to solve the quadratic equation. At which point, when I'm done with this direct instruction, B, you guys at home, I want you to log off, go into the Google Classroom, and I want you to do some independent work or practice. You know, I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow. We can go further tomorrow if you have any questions. While A, we're going to continue to do this work. Also with an English lesson, let's say that the teacher teaches a lesson, they have a group, some type of group activity simultaneously, and then the teacher engages the students on campus in a Socratic seminar or whatnot, and then the B cohort would be getting that same activity the next day, but in the meantime, they would log off and then they would do independent work or whatever was assigned, or maybe it's a pre-recorded lesson that they're going to engage on in home. But they would all be checking in, whether you're in front of the teacher or at home at the beginning of each period, and then the teacher would give instruction as to what they would be doing next. Now, if it's 100% distance, then obviously nobody's coming on campus, so then all students would be logging in at the start of the period, and then the teacher could say, okay, A, stay logged on for the next 15, 20 minutes, and then B, log back on. And they could do whole group. So there's some flexibility there as to how they deliver the instruction.
But the point being, that's exactly this, it's the same schedule. It's the same
Exactly,
periods, I
yes.
should
Thank
say.
you for pointing that out. It's the same schedule, whether you're 100% at home or whether you're coming every other day.
Sure, our high school kids will be happy to know days of sleeping in are over. So in terms of online, we can customize however we need to. That's one of the criteria of schools PLP that we liked. We absolutely can offer it for students who have an IEP. That being said, we would also have to continue their designated services and figure out a time for them to receive those services from their case carrier or an IEP teacher. So there are a number of accommodations that are built into the system so that we can build the students' accommodations around the lessons. We can alter the lessons. We have the ability to add courses. So if a student, in addition to their 6 courses, we wanted to add a 7th course of just reading intervention, we can do that as well. So Schools PLP allows us to customize it. What I would say is this is one of the reasons we stayed a little bit away from designing an actual schedule and blocking that out, because we really want to we want to see who it is that's signing up for online, and then we'll customize accordingly.
And then if Dr. Kelly could just please go back to the hybrid model elementary schedule, that elementary one more back. Mrs. Silberling is going to talk a little bit more about it, but since you asked about special ed, we do have a notation here that our SDC special ed students will be on an AM PM cohort, and so they would be coming 5 days a week, and that's because they have unique services per their IEP. So Mrs. Silberling is going to talk a little bit more about that in an upcoming slide. Any other questions?
You answered my first one, which was going to be a little bit more detail on what the non-on-campus people are doing on those days, because that's good to understand. 2 others. One, for the lunches, are we distributing lunches the way we did previously, the grab-and-goes, or is it more traditional where some people are buying and all that?
So we're working through all the answers to all of those questions and more. Right now, we are actually trying to lobby fairly heavily with the federal government to provide, so that they provide a waiver like we had in the springtime. So what happened in the springtime is they provided us a waiver that allowed us to give meals to all students, and we didn't have to do the kind of tracking that normally happens during the school year. Currently, we do not have that waiver in place, and so we are working hard to lobby our elected officials to provide that waiver. So that would allow us greater flexibility for
So
meal
as the ledge
service.
rep, let me know what support you need.
Yep, happy to.
And then the other question is, maybe it's going to be later in this, do we have projected dates when we're going to tell parents about this option and give them deadlines when they have to choose
Yes.
by?
Yes, yeah. Again, as soon as we get ratification, we'll be sending out a letter to our parent community, explaining the options and giving them a deadline to opt into the second option. The default would be the option number 1, the hybrid model, should they not do anything.
I have a suggestion. This comparison slide of spring versus what we expect in the fall, it's excellent, very, very welcome from a parent's perspective. You should make it the first slide in the entire deck, because this is really what a lot of parents want to be reassured about, that the program and the quality of instruction and the supervision and the day-to-day interaction of kids with their teachers is going to be a lot more rigorous and designed for instructional excellence than the spring was.
We agree, and we actually thank Brad Waller because it was his idea. We stole it.
Yeah, we took Brad Waller, who's forwarded one to us, and Susan redondoized it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be in the handout.
Yep.
A couple more questions to throw at you. Let's say if you're a parent and had a student at the continuation at high school at Dreisler, what would they be doing here, and how would they be approaching this coming school year?
So the students at Dreisler are also assigned to a teacher. So a lot of the elements of the hybrid are the same in that they are assigned classes, they're on a roster, they'll be split in order to meet the physical distancing requirements. Depending on the load of the class, they may not have to split the roster, and then they too would be in a cohort A and B. The difference is that the instructional minutes for the continuation school is less, like it is now, and so then Mr. Breedy would be setting up a schedule in terms of what their day would look like. It would pretty much be the same where they attend classes, but maybe a shorter amount of instructional minutes because their requirements are much less. But they would still be in 2 cohorts, and they would still be coming into school when we return to the hybrid.
And if you were a parent with the existing at-home learning, you would basically be doing a school's PLP program, presumably.
Independent
study Independent study.
program that's currently in place, we don't plan to change. Making any changes, it's working, so we want to keep them.
So independent
program.
study still works. And any students that might be credit deficient or doing credit recovery would have a lot of options, it looks like?
They have a lot of options, absolutely.
They still can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a couple of questions. So can you speak a little bit more? We're going to be starting in 100% distant learning. That was established by Dr. Keller at the beginning. So the hybrid model will be in the 100% distant learning, which is why we share that schedule. We are giving parents an option here to choose 100% online. What are the core differences there, aside from that you wouldn't be returning to school once we have met the conditions within the community?
The number one difference is that you are, who is providing your instruction. So it's either school's PLP is providing the instruction, or it's the classroom teachers providing the classroom instruction. That's the number one core difference. And in addition, all assessments are being done through school's PLP. The grading is done through school's PLP. And you have a teacher monitoring the system and monitoring your path through it, supporting, kind of coaching, giving nudges when necessary. But hybrid distance is through our teachers.
And I just want to add another distinction that we have to point out is that you would, if you're choosing the hybrid, you are also choosing to physically come back to campus when we do open up our campuses. And if you have an issue with the masks or whatever that reason is that the parent decides they don't want their student to be on campus around their peers or in a classroom setting, then the hybrid would not be the selection for them. Then the school's PLP would be the option where you are 100% remote at home. So that is something parents need to consider as well.
And we want to remind you about the commitment to the
Yes,
semester.
that
That's
was-
very important. You can't just slide in and out. There are, we
I
need
don't
the
think we
commitment.
addressed that here, did we? I can't remember which meeting that was.
Absolutely. So it's really important in order to get full credit obviously in schools PLP. If you are opting into the online schools PLP, we need you to stay in it through the end of the semester, particularly at the secondary level, at the elementary. We could look at it at the trimester, but you won't receive full credit for the course. And so we're not going to be able to assign credit. So the jumping out prior to the semester just can't be done.
One of the things you and I talked a lot about is that if you do choose this 100% distant learning, they're still getting the same options as best we can replicate. So I want to
Yes.
thank you for making sure that that's possible. And then I found out today, too, that you are still able to participate in a sport
Yes.
and choose this 100% distance learning module.
Yes.
So there are important differences, but one of the things, and I love the slide, I agree, that slide and the differences is the thing that we're going to have to just keep coming back to. One of the things, too, that parents talked about is a consistent way of knowing what their kids' assignments are.
Right.
And finding it in one spot, which obviously, if you chose this school's PLP
will.
model, it's in one system.
And that being said, though, in hybrid, that's a lot of the work and the training that we're doing leading up. Looking at a learning management system, whether it's Google Classroom, where we're housing everything there. It was really important as we read the surveys, we just kept hearing the parent perspective, the experience of our students. This multiple clicking here, going here, that's very, very frustrating, particularly for our young kids. And so that's what we're working on designing, making sure it's all located here. Just like everything you're going to learn is within this classroom, everything that you're going to need to work on and do, we want to link it and we want it under one house. That was it, loud and clear for parents.
One last question.
Sure.
Band, theater, and choir.
Yes.
The health order was very specific about that. What, have we made a decision, or do we even have a decision to make for those parents, who choose, and those students, not parents, the students, who this is their passion, this is their elective? Do we have any answers for them at this point?
So we don't have any clear-cut answers for them, but given that order, and you'll see that we are asking for the calendar to be pushed back, it will give us time to reorganize the master schedule. And knowing that that's a course that we can't, at the secondary level, you have to take a year-long course. So it's not a matter of, we'll maybe add it later. If we can't add it now, we can't add it, because then you don't get that year-long course. So we would need to change that option, and when students register for classes, they give multiple choices. So it's just finding out what we can do with that credential teacher in terms of music, and then reassigning those students to a class. So we'll be working with the 3 secondary schools to figure out that master schedule change, and the additional week would help us.
So to summarize these two options that you've shown us, option 1 is the hybrid option, which is a combination of in-classroom and distant learning. We just so happen to be starting out in the 100% distant learning mode, but we're in the hybrid option, and we'll switch to the combo of in-class and distant when we're allowed.
Absolutely.
Option 2 is the online learning, and as you're mentioning, that online learning is a commitment. That actually, they're both a commitment. Once you commit to that, you're pretty much in that for the semester, at minimum. So is that correct, Steve?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
One last question. I'm sorry.
Perfect.
For clarity for parents and for staff and what have you, if on the traditional model of hybrid, obviously if we're on campus in person, what is the responsibilities ultimately for, I'll call it staff and what have you, when kids are virtual versus in class? Meaning, if they're in cohort A and on Tuesday they're in class and then Wednesday they're online, the responsibility for staff and then ultimately as far as the kids' attendance would be what, I guess?
Yeah, so let's pick like a 7th grade class, period 1. you've got half the cohort in front of you, you've got half online. We want to give our teachers some flexibility, right? If, oftentimes pulling 35 kids onto an online platform and looking to see where everybody is can be a little bit time consuming. We want to give them a little bit of flexibility, but we're taking everybody's attendance. Whether you're in front of me or whether you're live, we're going to stop and we're going to take attendance. Some teachers, again, we want to give them some flexibility. Some teachers may stay live and start the lesson. Some teachers may then say, all right, guys, those of you who are at home today, I need you to log into the Google Classroom and I need you to pull down the lesson I've pre-recorded because that's going to work better for that cohort. Or I'm going to need everybody to stay live, and then they're going to start the lesson. It really will depend on what works best for that teacher's lesson. The teacher could stop and put some kids in some breakout rooms to do some small group discussion. It really will depend on the course, but we are going to be expecting, if the teacher can keep the kids live with her or him for the lesson, or the kids there will be some sort of pre-recorded lesson of that teacher that teacher has created available for them during that time period, and that the teacher's still available for them, whether they're in the person or at home.
Okay. And just for clarity for parents, are these lessons being recorded in general, meaning if for some reason kid's sick, misses it, or what have you?
That was kind of a practice that we put forward in the spring. Things happen, right? We wake up and Frontier has decided not to come through on a Tuesday. Not that I'm speaking from personal experience. So that we know that we want to make sure that we have these things available. So that's a common practice. Our teachers will record it and then post it. And then we just need to make sure that, and for a lot of our kids, even if they were live in person, they might need to see it a few more times.
And just for clarity, that would be up to the teacher. I mean, we're not requiring them to
No,
record
I
it,
get
but yeah.
that, but it's more just.
They can if they choose to, and then post it obviously would be helpful, not having to reteach it, but that would be up to them.
And they also will have this school's PLP, even those who are not selecting the 100% learning, our
Yeah.
teachers who are using hybrid will have this as
Totally.
almost
While
an
I'm with you-
additional resource.
While I'm in here, I want you to
Yes.
complete lesson, blah, blah, blah,
Okay.
blah. Yeah.
And would that follow the same suit as with elementary, or how would that differ?
The same. The same. It's a little bit more challenging when you have 5 and 6-year-olds. So an elementary teacher might, while kids are being screened at the gate, they might be going online. So it's going to be a little bit, vary a little bit.
Got it. I think we're good for right now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Toronto, I'll ask, thank you very much, Dr. Wiles. It's been a couple people up there. We're going to have Dr. Toronto come back, the ever-evolving FAQs, and I would ask parents, if you're listening, I mean this sincerely, please look at our FAQs when we distribute them. They answer a lot of questions, and I want to applaud Dr. Toronto for assembling this list with the support of the reopening think tank. Thank you.
No problem. I'll be brief. I mean, Dr. Keller hit the nail on the head there in terms of they are ever evolving. For the past few months, we've been listening to parents' emails, phone calls, conversations we've had in C19 or RTT to compile a list of questions. Even as recent as last night, we've made some additional changes to them so that way we are current and up to date. So the questions are meant to kind of give parents an idea of what is our plan going forward and for reopening, but also to give us a better understanding of what we need to address in our plans. And so, as Dr. Keller mentioned, we will be sending an invitation to our community and our staff, inviting them to a reopening schools town hall for next Tuesday, the 28th, from 4 to 6 p.m. Again, that information will come out in more detail later this week. We will include the FAQs, as well as a link for parents and staff to submit questions in advance. So the goal for us will be to have parents look at the FAQs first, and staff for that matter, and maybe the question you have is already addressed here, or maybe it'll be part of the other documentation that we send home later this week. And then therefore, any remaining questions, we'll ask them to please submit them to our town hall. And so we'll receive those questions in advance, and then we, the people who are on the panel, will collectively address any and all remaining questions during that time frame to our community. So again, just to be brief with our FAQs, we are listening, and so if anything else comes up, please don't hesitate to reach back out to us, and we will continue to evolve and make changes.
And just to clarify with the FAQs, along with the documents, what we share with the parent community and our staff, for that matter, for everybody, we will have modifications as we go along. We're, Torrance has kind of been out in front in the larger South Bay about their plans, along with us. It's not I know every school district around us, it's not a dig on any local district at all, but my point is we're going to learn from our brothers and sisters down the street, down the road, throughout the state, nationally, and so when we can be agile and update, we will, and so these will be living documents, including the FAQs. Any more questions for Dr. Troy?
I have a few.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we've been in the weeds of this, and I thank everyone who has worked from the day this school shut down to this moment to come to this place and address questions. But this, for many, is the very first time they're hearing this level of detail. So I fully anticipate that there will be questions that may not be addressed here, and we're counting on our community to be looking at these things and reading it and asking those questions. So what, and I hope the town hall that we're going to do on the 28th, is that recorded, and will it live there so people could watch it if you can't
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
at that town hall? And secondarily, if somebody has a question, I know Dr. Wiles mentioned it earlier, how are we going to sort of, there's going to be a lot of questions, especially after this meeting. I know
Right.
the town hall will ask more.
Sure.
They're invited. I don't want anyone to get the impression that we're not here to answer questions, but I'd rather them be directed to the people who could answer and not shared necessarily in places where they could get an answer from someone who may or may not have all the information.
Correct. And so what I would say is in the reopening plan document, we have created in each category for the subcommittees, for example, the operations, the email address for Dr. Alpern is on there, specific to her. For instruction, it is Dr. Wiles, Dr. Wesley, Dr. Cho, everybody. And so we are very specific on that to ensure that we are directing parents to the right person who can answer that question most effectively.
And it's also going to obviously require not just a village, but our parents too, understanding, that they're a part of this process. So I thank them in advance for taking the time to read this and ask all the important questions that we're going to have to.
Correct.
And I do believe we have the ability to take just like right now, this will be posted on our district website, that we do have the same ability with that WebEx event to place the recording on our website as well.
Yep, love it. All right. So let's talk about the other CDC. We have our Child Development Center moving forward, and Therese Van Duzen is here, our Director of CDC.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, following our LA County Department of Health guidelines, we opened our summer program on June 11th. We were the first district to do so. It's awesome. So we have 2 to 3 classrooms open on every campus, elementary campus, across the district. A total of 167 students are enrolled, with 10 students per classroom, multi-age groups because the groups are small, and then we also have to have siblings in the same group. Yes, we're having the kids wear masks and do physical distancing, but thanks to our creative and awesome teachers, they're doing it in such a creative way, as you can see in the pictures with tic-tac-toe on the window or playing in water and that child's still wearing a mask. Just bring an extra mask, obviously. But our kids are adapting. They're doing great. They're having fun. Parents are really happy with the program. I haven't heard any complaints as of yet. I even had a teacher share with me yesterday that a parent told her that she was a miracle worker for what she's done with her child so far this summer. I've also had 3 other districts reach out to me that I've met with that want to follow our lead in opening up their programs as well. So in planning for fall, since we're starting with 100% distance learning, what CDC wants to do is continue what we're already doing, which is offering the 5-day program, full day. The only thing we're going to do is shift our time, because currently we're open from 8 to 4. So open earlier in the morning so that we can get kids through their health valet check and checked into classrooms, so they're there with the schedule that Dr. Wesley showed you, where they have that classroom meeting at 8:30. So our teachers can help them get into that class meeting and participate, and our teachers can help them walk through the day on that schedule that Dr. Wesley shared. And then when we switch and pivot back to the hybrid model where they're in class and also distance learning, what we'd like to do is we're going to focus on their after-school program at this point. And then what we're going to do, we're going to work with the principals so that our kids are in the same classroom or the same cohorts. So if I have 20 kids that are in 5th grade at Washington, I'll work with Andrea to make sure they're all in the same classroom so that we can have one teacher, just like they have one teacher, that can be with that same group of children each day. And we're looking at all different space options for CDC, whether it's our current CDC classrooms, the libraries on campuses, or cafeterias, as well as looking at a possible push-in model where our staff actually goes into the elementary school classroom when school lets out so that the kids don't even have to move through campus. We're also exploring full-day care support for students on the other days if space allows. That's it.
I guess the one sort of question, people out there like to claim that young kids won't wear masks and stuff, so just relate the experience of what it's been like, particularly for the youngest kids.
It's been a challenge. That has been the comments when we did a survey with the staff. That has definitely been a challenge, but they've gotten better. Like, I've talked to a staff member over at Washington, and she was saying that the first week, 2 weeks, was really hard, but now the kids are doing it. Like, we would offer them mask breaks, like if they went further than 6 feet from other students, have your mask breaks. So as time went on, the mask breaks aren't as often because they've gotten used to wearing them. Kind of like I have.
I still have.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Ms. Van Dusen. We're going to have Ms. Sibberling come back up, the Executive Director of Special Education.
I'm back. In all of the planning that we've been doing, we have been really vigilant about understanding and knowing that our students with disabilities need different considerations at times, and we understand and believe that this is a truly vulnerable population. That being said, when we talk about the different models, when we look at and knowing that we're opening with the 100% distance learning, that our students with disabilities, we plan on providing their designated services that are outlined in their individual education plans or IEPs to the greatest extent possible virtually live. So we understand that those services are critical to our students' success, and that our staff believes the same thing and understand that in maximizing those virtual live during the distance learning process. When we are able to open in a hybrid model in class, the plan is to offer these to the maximum extent possible in person, which means that our students with IEPs may be able to stay after 1 o'clock, come on the day that is not their cohort's day, in order to receive these services in person, because we understand how valuable they are for our students, and I think most of our staff would agree that that is the best way to provide them. Also in the hybrid model, when we were able to return to campuses, our special day class students, which I know this was discussed slightly earlier, and our special education preschool students will attend school 5 days a week with a modified day in either morning or afternoon cohorts. And the thought process behind this is a group of students that thrives on consistency in schedules, and in an effort to really help maximize their potential, it's critical that they have a very consistent 5-day-a-week experience. For our school, myself and the nursing team is working really closely at monitoring and looking at our immunocompromised students. We plan to work with our principals and individually with families to create plans when possible for these students to safely be on our campuses. That work has already started, and we will continue to work on that because I think that needs to be in place sooner rather than later for this group of students. Our students with sensory, cognitive, and behavioral needs is the group that's really outlined as having difficulty with wearing masks, but the guidelines allow for them to wear face shields when applicable, and also other coverings. So we will work individually with those students and families and IEP teams to find the safest solution for these students without jeopardizing their unique needs in any way. Also, our staff who are working with students who are deaf and hard of hearing or who require oral response, we have already purchased clear masks. They're pretty great. So that they can utilize that, so that those that need to be able to see your mouth, read lips, or any of those types of things, that will be available for staff members. They also have the option outlined to wear face shields in the guidelines. our special education staff and our general education staff are some of the most inclusive individuals I've ever worked with. They care deeply about our students with special needs, and I truly believe they will work very hard to come up with creative, unique solutions to implement accommodations, and every single one of them will work very hard to implement the IEPs. They always are available to our parents, and I have seen both general ed and special education teachers come up with some very creative solutions for our students with the most unique needs.
Any questions?
I do, yeah, and I know this is terrifically difficult, but what do we do with students who needed one-on-one aids going in? Have we figured out any solution to that? Because I know that's extraordinarily difficult.
Yes.
Given the circumstances.
It is definitely something we're outlining right now with my team. I'm also working with Derek when staff are on campus to make sure that there is technology available to have synchronous experiences for the aides when a teacher is teaching a lesson, that an aide could be on a WebEx or a small group. So we are working on solutions to that right now and outlining those expectations so that we can ensure that IEP services, to the greatest extent possible, are implemented in that live instructional synchronous activities.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, back to me. I want to thank our team for bringing forward what we believe is a great start to, a reopening plan that best meets the needs of our kids and obviously puts our staff in a better position to provide a better program for kids and families this school year. The proposed timeline, there will be information going home to parents. I'll show you in a second. The board will vote today, or consider, I should say, on the school start date, which would be pushed back a week. This allows our staff to be better prepared, provided professional development to guide them in this return. I do want to kind of show you the cover, and any savvy person watching this will say, oh, I know when you're going to send this out. You're going to send this out July 22nd. Well, that is the date that is on there. It'll either be the 22nd or the 23rd, barring any sort of hiccup. But we do have a draft of the reopening plan that we're ready to send to staff, of course, and parents. It is a lengthy plan. It encompasses pretty much everything that has been shared here. It is, as I shared, a lengthy document. We want to provide all the detail there. People can scroll to where they want, what they want, and as we move forward into the school year, what we'll do, we're starting large with a very big comprehensive plan, and then as we get closer to the start of the year, we will narrow the focus on to the site. And so I think parents that, like me, and I'll just use me as an example, I prefer a one-page document all day, every day. This is not one of those documents, and this was not a presentation where it was ideal for an 8 to 10 minute presentation or a one-page document. You have a lot of depth here, you have a lot of information, and a lot of focus on safety that we do not, and I do not want parents to miss, and our staff, absolutely. I do want to share that this plan that we share today, is going to mirror exactly what they're going to get, not exactly, but just different kind of look, what folks are going to get by the end of the week. Just a reminder, it'll come out sometime this week, first to staff and shortly thereafter to parents. And with that, I open it up to any questions you may have.
I think I asked them all during. So.
Yeah.
Can I ask one other? Automatically, students, just for a point of clarification, parents are given a choice here, students and parents are given a choice. If they don't make a selection or a choice, where will they be placed?
They will be placed in the hybrid program.
Okay. So we'll be ready with smaller groups, cohorts A and B, whether we get back onto campus or not. That's what that will be happening. They'll be broken up by the last names, all of that.
Correct, to the best of our ability, leveling off with the understanding that, it'll be a dynamic process, and you may have 12 in your A and 10 in your B, but we'll be close enough. Is that fair to say, Dr. Wesley? Okay.
And you did mention the town hall. You want to plug that one more time?
Yeah, that is, Dr. Toronto's taking the lead on that, and that is
The 28th.
July 28th,
From 4 to 6 p.m.
p.m., and we're going to be coming to you from our individual offices, and Dr. Toronto will be facilitating that. He'll be grabbing the questions ahead of time. Our goal is to get that invite to parents shortly after sending this out. We'll let people digest the document, the parents, and then let them know, check out the FAQs, and if you have any questions after that, guess what? Send your Google form on to Dr. Toronto. Did I have that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much to everybody. I know this has been a very long road and continues to be a long road, but to everybody on the think tank, we have our deepest gratitudes, because this has been an event like no other.
Yes, sir, and I do want to remind you, the think tank continues to think and meet.
Yes, yes. I thought I alluded to that, but if not, yes, it will continue to go until we're done. So, all right. So, moving on to the hearing section, I have 4 advanced written requests and a sizable amount of emails. Out of respect to those who are here, we are going to start with those who have arrived, and then to our best of our abilities, we are going to read most, if not all, the emails. A lot of the emails that came in are cut and paste, so, and they reflect the same topic. So I will do my best to acknowledge everyone that has written into us, but ultimately read selective and targeted emails. And then just a reminder for those that are online as well as will be speaking, most of the items that are being brought here are not items we can actually comment on. So they're not on the agenda, so we're not being disrespectful when we don't answer to it. But ultimately, we're here to listen, but we actually cannot respond. So. So, 8.1, members of the audience may address the board on any topic regardless of whether it is listed on the agenda. However, due to Brown Act regulations, the board cannot engage in public discussion on items not on the agenda. Topics not on the agenda, which are brought forth to the board's attention, may be investigated by the administration and a report made to the board either publicly or privately at a future meeting. Comments from visitors shall not exceed 3 minutes unless the time is waived by the majority of the board. I would ask those who are speaking today to try your best to stay around 3 minutes. We will do our best not to cut you off, but we do have a lot to cover still. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and number of persons wish to be heard. First request I have is from Sarah Robinson.
Hello.
Hello.
My timing was at 3:20, so I'll
That's fine.
go
Like
with
I
that.
said, as close as possible.
Good afternoon, Dr. Keller, cabinet and board members. My name is Sarah Robinson. I've been a Spanish teacher at RUHS since 2007. I also serve as chair of the Department of World Languages and as a lead instructional technology teacher. I have served as a member of the Reopening Think Tank and have appreciated the collaboration amongst all RBUSD stakeholders to be sure that we reopen schools in a manner that is safe for students and staff. I rise to speak today to share my own experience with distance learning. Before March 13th, we were working in our classrooms and offices, challenging, engaging, and connecting with our students every day. You all have been very deliberate about celebrating that work in here and out in the community. But somehow there's a perception that exists that on March 16th or shortly thereafter, that amazing work stopped when our schools physically closed, and that teachers and counselors and school psychologists took a 3-month paid vacation. I hope that my remarks here will dispel that myth. I spent most of April and May working from my parents' home in Santa Clarita, where I created a recording studio in which to record videos for my students. I used a step and repeat. I printed out photos of all my seniors and used them to create a mosaic as the background for all of my videos. The videos included direct instruction, reading of novels in Spanish, and modeling the speaking activities I wanted my students to complete individually. Lucky enough, my parents also had a box of old Halloween costumes where I was allowed to liven up my videos with a selection of wigs and other headpieces. Through consultation with my students, they told me they preferred the videos to live WebEx meetings because they could pause them and rewatch whenever they wanted. So I use the live sessions just as kind of a check-in, a catch-up, or to answer their many questions. One of the challenges I faced during distance learning was that I had a deaf student, and the auto-generated closed captions were only available in English. But through collaboration with our deaf and hard of hearing teacher, Dana Mangieri, we were able to find a bilingual workaround. Unfortunately, this did mean I had to spend about an additional hour on each video going through the transcription to double-check the Spanish and also correct a few areas where I translated things into English. When some of my students reported they were feeling depressed or unable to engage with any of the things that normally interested them, I reached out to counselors and colleagues to share that information, as well as to suggest ways for them to stay active or pursue fun activities via the internet and social media. I held department meetings, trained other teachers in how to use WebEx and class pages, as well as how to use Illuminate to conduct online assessments. I participated in a committee to discuss grading policies during distance learning, and am now monitoring students who are trying to improve the incomplete grade they received in June. I'm going quick. It's true that sometimes I took my laptop outside and set up my workstation on a beach chair. And sometimes I took a 30-minute break in the middle of the day to go for a walk with my dog. But overall, as a 15-year classroom teacher, I can say that in the fourth quarter of this year, I spent more time lesson planning, assessing and evaluating, and communicating with parents and students than I have in any year since my first year of teaching. While I may be involved in more district committees than the average RBTA member, my work is in no way unique. Teachers and counselors in our district had 3 days to change our entire method of delivering instruction and services to our students. We dealt with policies that were written and rewritten almost every week. Many members had to also deal with handling their own children's education or the loss of a partner's job. It was difficult, but we did it because we are professionals. I'm asking you to treat us that way and let us choose the distance learning work location that will allow us to be the most successful in delivering quality online instruction to our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next comment is from Jennifer Westland.
My name is Keely Pampa. I am a high school English teacher and the former AVID coordinator. I taught AVID for 8 years. I've been teaching in Redondo since 2008. I teach, this year I got my dream schedule. I get 5 sections of co-teach, being able to teach both our co-taught English 9 and English 10 classes. So I work with a lot of students with IEPs. I work with a lot of students with 504s, and I love our EL students. I'm that teacher that says, bring them on, give them to me. I say that because I want you to know the people I have in mind the most. Those are the students and families that I am most concerned about. I worked tirelessly, just like Ms. Robinson just shared, in the spring to make sure that I was able to reach out to those families and students on a regular basis. Working at home, even though I have a 4-year-old of my own, allowed me more time to actually spend calling families and calling students, having one-on-one WebEx sessions to check in with students who are struggling either academically or socially or emotionally. Working from home was where I work best. And I'm hoping that our board and our admin will trust that our teachers know where we work best. And some of us are excited to be able to return to our school sites and be able to work in our own classrooms. But for many, many teachers, that's not feasible, and it's not an option for a lot of our families. The MOU that has been shared with us and the plans that have been shared with the teachers is to have staff required to be on campus 5 days a week. And that we understand that there are accommodations for people who need them for family and childcare or for medical needs, but as many of us know, every single family's needs in this time of COVID are different. And there are systems that are being created that are going to create unfair imbalances of where people have to work. So I am urging you to trust our teachers, that they will work where they can give our students the best. Many of us have been working all summer to make sure that we can give them our best and create things that will make them do their best. So please trust that we know where to work from to give our community, every stakeholder, the best experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Keely. All right, next up is Jennifer Westland. I believe.
Hi. I'm Jennifer Westerland. I'm a parent with 2 boys in the district. I appreciate everything you've done. I've listened, and it sounds like things have definitely improved from this spring. But I just wanted to read a statement very quickly. I know the biggest concern with a lot of the parents is that the children being sick and passing it on to adults, because I have plenty of parents who, you know, they have grandparents who are taking care of the children while they work. But we're more concerned about the health detriments from staring at the screen all day. The number one question that my pediatrician always asks is how many hours of screen time do they get? And it really should be no more than an hour a day. Of course, with the 100% distance learning and then the hybrid, that's pretty much out the window. I already know of one child, a very good friend of my son, whose eyesight has been seriously impeded because of all the screen time over the spring. The American Academy of Pediatrics say children learn best in school, and Dr. Fauci believes the health benefits of returning to school far outweigh the detriments of the current pandemic. While Newsom has stated that counties on the watch list must conduct distance learning until they've been off the watch list for 14 consecutive days, the order also states that the superintendents are allowed to submit school district waiver requests to reopen elementary schools for approval by the local health officer. This waiver really needs to be submitted for our elementary schools. The population of Redondo Beach is over 67,000 people, and thus far there have only been 345 positive cases of the virus. That's 0.005%. I know it's not nothing, I know it's something, but it's definitely not worth potentially harming these kids mentally, socially, and physically down the line. And based on your surveys, you know that there's a large portion of parents who feel the same way and want to see these kids back at their desks in person. As for the social distancing, I know that we're supposed to stay 6 feet apart to help the spread. But again, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, spacing desks 3 feet apart and avoiding close contact while the kids are wearing masks, which I know is a mandate for all the schools, will definitely help with that. All of the experts saying outside is better as well. There might be a way, all of the schools have large outdoor areas. There might be a way to have the classes outside. I know plenty of parents, as a member of the PTA, when we've requested pop-ups, they've shown up with hundreds. I'm sure there's a way to get that going. In short, my plea is that RBUSD is not LAUSD. We do not compare in the number of cases, so we should not be lumped in with them just because we happen to be part of the same county. We really need to submit this waiver for the elementary schools, and the kids need to go back to school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I don't believe there's any additional comments on agenda items or anything, so I'm going to begin the process of reading the emails that have been submitted as best I can, that I along the way. So I've broken them up into 3 categories, again, because the topics itself are not on the agenda. We cannot actually respond to them other than to read them. So the first email I've received, or that we have received, is from Warren Chun. Dear Dr. Keller, board president and members of the school board, thank you for making Redondo Beach a great place to live. I've been a resident of Redondo Beach since 2000 and resident near Franklin Park since 2011. As you may know, the Redondo Beach, our RBUSD partnered with the Friendship Foundation to redevelop the Beach City's Child Development Center in 2019. While there has been no formal plan drawn, it would be important that the school board has proper oversight to the redevelopment of the site in particular, sufficient community outreach, have an architectural design that aesthetically fits and enhances the neighborhood, have ample parking on site only, keep the existing one-way entrance on Fisk and one-way egress to Inglewood. See attached PDF. The Franklin Park neighborhood is looking forward to the partnership of the school board, Friendship Foundation, and city. Best regards, Warren Chung. I will reach out to him, provide him what we've done in the past, so.
Which is?
All the CEQA approvals, as well as our kind of what the board has approved and laid out in the past, so. And kind of direction where it's going, so. All these emails that I'm about to read are on the topic of reopening. This one is from Renee Sorgan. Dear President Serkin and members of the board, I have 2 children in the Redondo Beach Unified School District, an incoming 5th grader, an incoming kindergartner at Jefferson Elementary. First, let me thank you for your outstanding leadership during this unprecedented time. I was impressed by RBUSD deftly handling the school closures and shift to online instruction in spring. Communication with parents has been excellent, and I very much appreciate that we've had a thoughtful and inclusive and science-based approach to making decisions about our children. I hope this approach continues. Second, I know you have very big decisions to make about what the school looks like in the fall. I appreciate that you put together a task force with diverse representation to study the issues, and I very much appreciate that you've asked for parents' feedback. Some school districts have already decided to go online in the fall. I urge RBUSD not to be influenced by other school districts. Please consider what is best for our community and our children. I strongly support taking aggressive safety measures to ensure the minimal possible risk for students, teachers, and staff, staggered schedules, hybrid learning, social distancing, masks, etc. But I strongly believe that our families need some level of in-person instruction in the fall. It is extremely difficult to manage full-time jobs and full-time homeschooling, and I know families in which one parent has had to stop working in order to support visual instruction or virtual instruction. I'm also worried about the mental health of our children. Over the past few months, I have seen a 10-year-old grow more and more socially isolated. He has lost the desire to talk to friends. He has told me he hates school. All of this breaks my heart. School provides so much more than academics. It provides routine, social comfort, mental health resources so critical in this time. Please consider adopting a hybrid model with options for pure virtual learning for families who do not want to return to in-person school. Also, please remember that this is a community effort. How can we parents help you? What resources can we provide? What do we need to do to make sure our children and teachers can return safely in the fall? Please let us know. Thank you for your time to read my comments.
Brad, I have a question just on procedure. I didn't realize that we were required to read out emails that were sent.
They have requested in lieu of coming in person, and due to COVID, I'm acknowledging.
And there's no way that instead of just you, because we can't respond to them anyways, there's no way that instead of you just reading them aloud, we can't just publish them on the website as part of the record?
I mean, that's up to the board. I think, out of respect, at least to some of them that have taken the time. I mean, we've limited them to an extent versus just not, meaning I'm not reading every email we've gotten by any means, because there's just there's no way. To try to strategically look at them, if the board is open to us just publishing them, I'm fine with that too. But, I think it's appropriate for us to at least acknowledge whatever sides came in as far as that goes.
I know that districts that received like 400 comments by email to be all asking to be read, they summarized them, read a select number of them, and then published a Google Doc or something like that, where everything was available for public review after the fact.
Yeah, and that's
That
kind
was
of
only because there's no way they can fit it.
No, and that's what we've done is we've tried to isolate them so that there's not a whole lot of repetitiveness.
Okay.
There will be some repetitiveness. I don't want to give the impression that it's strictly everybody's completely different, but there, we have topics of racism and other things that are in here, so I'm trying to make sure that we get it. But, unless the board has objection, otherwise, do our best just to try to. I appreciate the expeditiousness, but at the same token, I think everyone should be heard at the same time as much as we can. So, okay, with that in mind, this one comes from Megan Crawford. Hello, RBUSD board members and Dr. Keller. I'm writing to you today to explain my concerns for coming back to campus next month. Our numbers in California and LA County are just too high and risky for staff members to return. We should be starting with a distance learning model and reevaluating later when it's safe to do so. I know the LA County Department of Health should come out in the next few weeks with their statements, and it seems likely that they will recommend distance learning due to our caseloads. Since this seems inevitable, I'm begging for you to make a decision now to give teachers and families time to plan for this instead of waiting. Let's put student and staff safety first. As a member of the PVP-USD school board, I also advocated for this last night at my board meeting. If you can read my statement below, truly to see all the reasons why this is the best route to do so, I thought it would be better to email this to you all now so you can watch my full video and explanation rather than trying to condense it during one of your board meetings. Thank you very much, and I hope you all consider this. She put on a YouTube link on there. We will make sure it's on the website for people to click through. This one actually should go there. This one is from a Karen de Colabris. Dear Dr. Keller and board members, I've been a science teacher at RUHS since 2010. I'm writing you to give my background, my thoughts, and my concerns about remaining in my classroom during distance learning. I have 2 young daughters named Abby and Hannah, and I'm extremely scared to send them to daycare so I can sit alone in my classroom during distance learning. My husband is an essential worker doing disease surveillance for Orange County. He does not have the flexibility for working from home. He has been at work through the entire quarantine. Hannah is starting first grade in Garden Grove, and our home district will not meet in person either because Orange County currently has a 14% positivity rate, much higher than LA County. Being in my classroom means I need a full-time nanny or daycare, and one that would help her with her own distance learning as well. Abby has asthma and needs an inhaler anytime she has allergies or even a simple cold. I do not want to send her to daycare and put her at risk so I can sit alone in my classroom. I personally battle lung issues since birth and severe asthma and other things I'm just going to skip over. I've been commuting over 50 miles a day since I started teaching at RUHS. My kids have been in daycare from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. most days of the week. My family and I have sacrificed so much time together so that we can work at the best high school there is. I love my job, my fellow teachers, the RUHS staff, and most of all, the students I teach. I helped start our fantastic PLTW Biomed Science program. I have 3 different science courses each year. I'm a department co-chair and involved on campus. I love the RUHS and miss everything, but I'm asking not to sacrifice my family's health during this scary time. Do not want to expose my family to COVID even if I don't have to. Please consider allowing RBUSD teachers to work from home if they choose to during distance learning in 2021 year. I'm committed to RUHS and will be ready to return for the hybrid model when it's safe for everyone to do so. I have plenty of masks and face shields I've purchased for this. I hope you and all your families remain safe and healthy during this time. Thank you for your time and consideration. From Gina Block. I just received the MOU from our RBTA today. It mentioned the district is maintaining the position that all bargaining units must work from their school or sites 5 days a week during distance learning. Please reconsider making this mandatory to report to our school sites. There are many teachers, parents who need to be at home helping their kids and with the distance learning model. As we've implemented the distance learning model since March, some teachers really have it down and have purchased teaching from home props to make this happen for our kids. On the other hand, some teachers need to go to the school site and be in their classroom to do certain learning and maintain routine for their mental stability. Please give us the option to be in charge of our schedules, be present for our own children, and continue to use the strategies and setups that's worked for us since March. Appreciate your willingness to listen to our opinions and hope you are well and healthy during this time. Let's see here. Dear members of the school board, my name is Amanda Riley. I'm a mother of 2 elementary age students at Washington Elementary School. My family will be entering our 4th year at Redondo schools and have received the top-notch education our children have received so far. This spring, we learned about the challenges of balancing school and at home with the schedules of 2 working parents, one who has to leave and even travel for work, and one who is able to work at least part-time remotely. I have no doubt there are lots of factors and considerations you're all weighing in on in preparation for the upcoming school year. I want to raise one which you may not fully have considered. Across industries, there are a variety of positions which can be adapted for remote work environment, one of which is teaching. My cousin provides remote education to children in China from her home, where she set up a classroom environment in the corner of her guest room. Over the last few months, there have been numerous articles chronicling the push to bring employees back in the work environment, ending remote working. This is obviously problematic, and 30% of the workforce has children at home, and seeing as none in our area will be returning to school in person, this push to work on-site is highly problematic. Moreover, I suspect the percentage of teachers and staff with children at home far exceeds workforce average generally. Anecdotally, 100% of my teachers have had in the last 3 years in RBUSD schools and have had children at home. All this is to say, I believe at the beginning of the pandemic, and I believe now, that flexibility is key, and anything which encourages people to be out of the home, even for working hours, will subsequently encourage the spread of COVID-19 and prevent the eventual return to some level of in-person schooling. Beyond that, the push to get employees who could otherwise work from home to return to office or classrooms disproportionately affect working mothers. Newspaper reports recently have warned that this is pushing women out of the workforce. As a parent of elementary school children, I am very concerned because the vast majority of school teachers and staff at our school are female. While not having children at home, many are working mothers with children at home. I do believe, based on what I saw last year, that our teachers and special ed teachers can more than adequately provide appropriate education from their homes. In my profession, I've had to carve out a corner of our house so I can provide video-based resources as part of my job. I am confident that the RBUSD faculty has and will continue to do and support the work which they love. As I look towards a remote learning model once again in a month, I sincerely hope the district takes into account the needs of the family and their staff in these unprecedented times. Thank you for taking this into consideration, and I look forward to virtually attending tomorrow's school board meeting. Sincerely, Amanda Riley. Redondo Beach board members. First, I hope that you and your families are healthy and navigating this very crazy time as best as possible. In my lifetime, I would never envision living in a time where we are faced with a virus that has literally brought the world to a halt, having the opportunity to make real and systematic changes to racism in our country and abroad, as well as not knowing what the future holds as a family, community, and the world. It is without saying a very trying time for everyone. I do not envy the decision that you face, which affects not only my 3 children, but our community and state. Clearly, our community is divided between families that want to see the reopening of school and those who prefer the less popular option of full virtual learning due to safety concerns. I read the reopening protocols sent to parents by RBUSD without the guidance and clarification as published by the County of Los Angeles. Our school community was left with many questions and concerns, and it is daunting. However, Governor Newsom will shed some light on this regarding the reopening. Within this letter, there's a lot of requests, and specifically within here that I have promised this individual that we would respond back to. So I'm going to kind of skip over those just because it's 4 pages of questions, and I think for the audience is a little much because we can't really respond. Overall, the prospect of returning to campus is very daunting and unmanageable. The accountability on district staff and teachers to ensure proper handling will be overwhelming. Below are my thoughts on families' experience with virtual learning to take into consideration. Number 1, consistent online platforms across school grades and teachers. Number 2, at the minimum, 3 times a week for approximately 30 minutes online with small groups between student and teachers. Number 3, focus on core subjects such as math, reading, and writing. Number 4, pre-recorded videos should not be more than 5 to 10 minutes. Children are not capable of maintaining their attention spans longer than that time on pre-recorded videos. For parents that have multiple children in elementary, middle, or high school, there should be a predetermined time for teachers to meet with their students online. That way a parent can monitor and hopefully lessen the internet connectivity in a household. Chromebook access should be made available to all grades, not just grades 3+. As we discussed earlier, iPads will be available to the younger grades. Paper homework packets or assignments be made for pickup at outside bins at predetermined time by grades to maintain social distancing. Elementary age students, especially kinder through 3rd grade, do not have all the dexterity to do their work on Chromebooks, computers, tablets. As we know, penmanship is very important to continue to develop, whether it's writing numbers, sentences, that is important to still require manual pencil and paper assignments. Teachers can still teach from their classrooms and video their instructions with adherence to social distancing without students in the classroom. It will provide a professional visual for students instead of viewing the teachers from their home environment, which comes across as more casual. PE can be logged by students or parents instead of having PE online. One of the positives of this situation is I see more neighborhood kids riding bikes and simply walking around the neighborhood, and quite frankly, that's become a healthy lifestyle. Accountability and collaboration is important between students, teachers, and parents. Therefore, attendance, students, assignments, completion, teacher feedback, assessments, and early identification of academic intervention procedures must be a part to ensure positive and successful virtual learning. Academic community assistance should be established for students, teachers, and parents as an outreach program for students and families that are struggling academically to facilitate learning. Regrettably, not everyone's needs will be met. However, I urge you to make the best decision for our students, staff, teachers, family, community, and state. We are all in this together, and we must do what's right for our children. Let us not lose sight of that, and let us keep our children healthy and safe while educating them. Our children's lives do have a price tag. Do not have a price tag or political ties. They are simply children, and we must do what's right for them. Sincerely, Margot and Matt Trump. This one is from Karen Cull. As a group of parents who all have children with significant disabilities receiving special education services from the district, we would like to ask several questions of the board. I haven't seen this here. I think it will be best to answer these directly instead of
Yes, and I do want to, we've reached out to Karen, and Jessica Silverling will be following up with her questions by Friday, so we have followed up with her to let her know.
Yeah, that one I did not see, but yeah, when we start getting into questions, it's really hard because it's just to read them. So, my apologies to you, Karen. Dear Dr. Keller, esteemed members of the board, as a concerned parent in the RBUSD, we've been following with concerns of coronavirus from the LA County Department of Public Health. The news is worrisome on multiple levels, but I'll limit to it how it affects my children, their education, and their futures. Last week, Governor Newsom effectively shut down schools across the state for the short term in counties. As part of LA County, it is likely that our rates will fall in the near future and possibly the distant future. But we are not the same as other areas within LA County. Every community is different, and every region has its own infection rates and hospitalization rates. That being said, and in alignment with the Governor Newsom's first point in this 5-part plan, we would like to request in-person teaching as soon as possible. Our schools have a lot of open areas, and through creative planning, surely there can be outdoor classrooms made to accommodate the number of children within our district. This is especially crucial for our youngest and most vulnerable learners that are just beginning their educational journey and that cannot sit in front of a tablet and monitor for more than 5 minutes a day. As parents of 4 children, the burden placed on us to teach our children effectively is enormous. Not only are we not trained to teach this many different class levels, but we are not capable with the tools the school district has given us. Every teacher within the district is responsible for teaching their grade in their class a specific syllabus developed over years educational training to be implemented correctly in a way that meets the state requirements for learning and testing. Now we are being expected to achieve these goals with 4 different children. This is not feasible, nor is it maintainable in the long run. Our children will be losing these years of schooling and falling behind those in neighboring states or other countries. Not only that, but the emotional damage caused by extended social isolation is a serious side effect of this forced homeschooling. Young kids need to learn, and teachers want to teach. There's been a petition on change.org that's been going around our community, and many parents have signed. Your previous survey clearly indicated that parents want their kids to go back to school in person 5 days a week, yet your response was to offer hybrid. Now with the second survey, people are clearly stating that they feel comfortable going back with precautions. Sorry for being redundant, but there must be room for more creativity, i.e. bringing schools outside in smaller class ratios. We are fortunate with good weather in the South Bay, so surely our unused playgrounds and campus areas can be converted to make makeshift classrooms for the time being. This was submitted by Serena Glasser and Kate and Josh Berger. Let's see here. Let me jump to this for a second. All right, so this is from Kevin Britton. The state order allows superintendents to submit School district waiver request to reopen elementary schools for approval by the local health officer only after review of local epidemiology data and intervention strategies and in consultation with CDPH. School districts should work with their parents, unions, and community-based stakeholders to determine the specific needs of their community. Stakeholders are encouraged to provide feedback to their local districts as part of the decision-making process. I would like to ask the think tank members to please address the statement as it relates to RBUSD and the local community. Has the local Redondo Beach data been reviewed, and has RBUSD submitted a waiver request to the local health officer? What has RBUSD done to the work with parents, unions, and community stakeholders to determine specific needs of the community? Why was the July 17th email alerting parents of distance learning sent out hours after Governor Newsom's speech without addressing this key piece of information regarding possibility of the waiver based on community-specific data? Thank you, Kevin Britton. All right, I've got two more within here, and then we're going to move to another topic. So, dear RBUSD leadership, my name is Joshua Friedrich. I've been teaching math for 14 years at RUHS and graduated from RUHS in 1997. Proud Seahawk and been there for the greater part of my life. Being a part of the RUHS community has been one of the greatest honors of my life. I can't tell you how often I've encouraged my students to take a moment to look around and recognize the opportunity they've been given to live and learn at what Mr. Brandt and I endearingly describe as the greatest high school in the universe. I love that we preach family first, work-life balance, and work smarter, not harder, but I'm afraid he's caught wind of a policy proposal that flies directly in the face of these values that our community has worked so hard, very hard to cultivate and need to be addressed immediately. It is my understanding that our school board and administrative staff is pushing forth a mandate that teachers be present in their classroom for distance learning in whatever form it comes in the fall. I think this mandate will not only be counterproductive and inefficient, but will create unnecessary hardships for all teachers in the district, especially those with children. I am sure that in the coming days you will be flooded with emails from teachers opposing this policy, so I'll do my best to avoid talking points and reiterating topics for debate that I'm sure you'll be well aware of, maybe even sick of hearing at this point. I'm going to tell my story so that you can better understand the hardships of a teacher in my position. I am not alone. Many teachers, both men and women, and many of us still have small children who will obviously not be attending school in fall. My wife and I have a 2-year-old daughter. My wife works from home, running her own business, and has for years. Like many families, we struggle to balance our professional responsibilities with that of raising a child. Juggling my contracted hours and distance learning for over 160 kids with my wife's projects and meetings, along with our daughter's growing emotional needs, was one of the toughest challenges and what proved to be an incredible challenge time for most families. It wasn't easy, and it often required working from my parents' home so that I could provide quality supervision and that I could plan and grade for my 4 Algebra 2 and financial algebra class. It truly took a family effort to make this work so I could provide a quality product to my students. Like most professionals, I spent 2020 making the most out of a tough situation because of the flexibility in scheduling that has quickly become a cornerstone of the working world during this pandemic. If the district mandates teachers to be home in their classrooms to do the same work that they could easily do, then this entire schedule structure disintegrates, and we as a family will be forced to make tough decisions, pay for daycare during a global pandemic and putting our family's health at risk, or taking a leave of absence from the job I love to care for my daughter and leave our family's future, financial future in jeopardy. All of the distress of this painful decision is alleviated by simply allowing teachers to make the personal and professional choice to work from their classroom or home, or a combination of two. It's that simple. We as a society have extended flexibility and professional respect to the working class at large, in large part that they can be home to care for their children. Now, after caring for children our entire professional lives in a critical time where we desperately need support for our own children, our school district is taking our most valuable resource from us, time and presence from our families. How can we continue to talk about the RBUSD community caring about kids if they make this decision that so greatly negatively impacts the children of our staff? After years of promoting an ethos of family first, how can our families suddenly become expendable? After carefully cultivating a culture of professional respect and accountability for years in which teachers truly believe that the district cares about us, is the district really ready and willing to waste that political capital on a policy whose cost-benefit ratio is horribly skewed towards costs? Respect begets respect, and I can honestly say that I have the utmost respect for our leadership in this district, and I have lost count of how many times I have praised our school board to my family, neighbors, and the South Bay teaching community. I count on the school board and the high school team amongst my professional heroes, but I am afraid that a decision of this magnitude that demonstrates a lack of respect and professional courtesy to those who've been on the front lines of education for years will have a lasting and detrimental impact on the relationship between educators and the district. I implore you to reconsider your decision and play the long game in which teachers will feel supported and ultimately return the support, especially in these unprecedented times.
May I insert something here?
Sure.
This hasn't happened for quite a while, but Dr. Alpern has reminded me of this, and I just had a flashback.
Yes.
I believe there is a board policy that has our meetings ending at a prescribed 3-hour time limit, and if we are going beyond the 3 hours, the board needs to make a motion to extend the time limit for the board meeting. And I just want to make sure.
No, that's fine. We're technically at 2.5 hours right now, so.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will, so. This one comes from Tom Backley. On behalf of the Beach Cities Health District, I would like to commend the school district on their COVID-19 think tank and reopening plan. Allie Stewart and I were participants over the last few months. As someone who has recently been involved in recovery plans across different sectors, cities, chamber of commerce, et cetera, I can confidently say that the efforts of the school district have been exemplary. Solving the distance learning challenge that COVID-19 presents is complex and difficult. School district is looking after the learning needs of its students in a comprehensive and inclusive manner. The school district is also representing the interests of its students, teachers, and staff by addressing stress and social emotional issues that have been risen due to COVID-19. There's much more work to do, and the think tank has been the best practice for planning for the future of learning at RBUSD. Beach Cities Health District is proud to be a partner with RBUSD and looks forward to a future interactions and success. I will say, before moving on to the next topic, that we received probably 15 to 20 additional emails specifically on the MOU. As I mentioned to those online specifically looking, but follows basically kind of the grouping of what we just talked about. So, I'm happy to read their names, but I think ultimately we will make their letters available, but don't want to take this going from there. So, all right, so this is on the topic of racism specifically. In response to the recent events stemming from the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and too many others, a group of RBUSD alumni and current students have asked for support in advocating for the school district to be more responsive to the current issues facing our world and students. Petition was started to advocate a more diverse curriculum. In addition, an Instagram account was started to allow students without voice from the underrepresented group to share their experiences at RUHS. The request of RBUSD is to increase diversity and ensure more inclusion, voices within the community. If you'd like more information, you can go to the Instagram page. I will make sure this gets put up. Dear Dr. Keller and RBUSD Board of Education, my name is Sam Miller and I'm a current student. I support Redondo Beach Unified School District and the need for change because we need more diversity and representation in our schools, and all students deserve an education which reflects the shared experience of their ancestors as well as those whom they share similar struggles, including for people of color and for those who have historically been marginalized by our society. So much of what we've been taught in our schools and what continues to be taught glosses over important issues in our history that too often have been swept under the rug by educators at every level. Black history is American history, and we will no longer be whitewashed by white majorities, including in education. We need to hold students, parents, and faculty accountable for racist comments and behaviors by implementing a zero-tolerance policy. Our students are our future, and no student, regardless of their race, ethnicity, sexual preference itself, should have to endure acts of racism, discrimination. It is past time for change. I'm asking for this letter to be read aloud during the RBUSD board. Sincerely, Sam Miller, RBUSD. Hello, my name is Ronson Chu, and my kids go to Bernie. I support RBUSD and request the following. RBUSD actively implement anti-racist policies and practices. Some examples include diversifying curriculum, conduct a diversity audit of each campus, and at the district level, revising HR practices to bring diversity to the district across all levels from supporting staff to executive level, maintaining ongoing professional development for all staff, and responding to all other aspects of need that come to your awareness. The experiences the students have shared at Dear RBUSD on Instagram highlight the dire need for immediate change. Dear Dr. Keller, Dr. Wesley, and the RBUSD Board of Education, my name is Carol Legge, and I am a school grandparent. I have volunteered at Alta Vista Elementary, teaching garden and assisting in art classes. I support the need for change at RBUSD. We need more diversity and representation in our schools, and all students deserve an education which better reflects their own experience as well as their shared experience of their ancestors and those whom they share similar struggles, including for people of color and those who have historically been marginalized by our society. We also need to hold student, parents, and faculty accountable for racist, discriminatory, and bigoted comments and behavior by implementing a zero tolerance policy. Our students are our future, and no student, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual preference, gender identity, religion, etc., should have to endure acts of racism, discriminated, etc. It is past time for change. I request that this be read aloud. Let's make RBUSD phenomenal for all. Hello, Mr. Gallegos. We spoke last week. I decided to submit a public comment after all. The public comment I'd like to be read is as follows. My name is, I apologize, I'm going, Burgundy Montoya, and I'm an active participant in RBUSD. I support RBUSD and request the following. RBUSD will actively implement anti-racist policies and practices, including but not limited to diversified curriculum, conduct a diversity audit of each campus, conduct a diversity audit at the district level, revise HR policies to bring diversity to the district at all levels, support staff to the executive level, maintaining ongoing professional development for all staff, respond to any other aspect of needs that come to your awareness based on diversity audits or reports from students, families, and employees. The experiences the students have shared at Dear RBUSD highlight the need for this immediate change. Thank you. Dear Dr. Keller, Dr. Wesley, and Redondo Beach Unified School District, I have two children who attend RBUSD schools for their entirety of their primary and secondary education. For the upcoming fall 2021 semester, both my kids will be students at RBUSD. I support the need for change at RBUSD because they need more diversity and representation in our schools, and all schools deserve an education which reflects their own life experience as well as shared experiences of their ancestry and those who have shared similar struggles, including for people of color, those who have historically been marginalized by society. This letter basically replicates the one I just read, so I apologize. So, I mean, I think we acknowledge Mr. Miller's request for diversity, but I see his wife has written in the same within here. Susie Miller, again, not to marginalize it, just trying to keep the meeting flowing. This one is from Kate Ripley. Dear Dr. Keller, Dr. Wesley, and Redondo Beach Board of Education, my name is Kate Ripley, and I'm a former RBUSD student on Black Lives Matter. While I personally know from meeting with members in the district office that change is being thought about in both abstract and tangible ways, the lack of public attention has been shared on issues at hand is disparaging. You as a board must let the community know that you are committed to change. We need to know that you're ready for the challenge, ready to be held accountable. Saying these recent events are tragedies is not enough. It's about much more than what we've been seeing on the news. Publicly declaring that Black Lives Matter is the bare minimum. Black teachers matter, Black students matter, Black education matters. It's not enough to express condolences. As Desmond Tutu said, if you are neutral in situations of oppression, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Having gone to your school and spoken with so many faculty administrators, I do not believe your goal is to side with the oppressor, so please demonstrate the commitment I know that you have within you. It is not enough to be privately anti-racist or publicly not racist. We need you to be publicly anti-racist. I support the need for change at RBUSD because we need more diversity and representation in our schools, and all students deserve an education which better reflects their own experience, as well as the shared experiences of their ancestors and those with whom share similar struggles, including for people of color and those who have been historically been marginalized by our society. Our students are our future, and no student, regardless of their race, ethnic, sexual preference, gender identity, religion itself, should have to endure acts of racism, discrimination itself. It's past time for change. I request that this letter be read aloud at the board meeting on July 21st. Sincerely, Kate Ripley. We have two left. Dear Dr. Keller, Dr. Wesley, and RBUSD Board of Education, my name is Salvador Placencia, and I'm a RBUSD parent at Alta Vista Elementary. I support the need to change because we need more diversity and representation. Most of the paragraph is kind of copied from where it is, so I'm going to skip forward a bit. My son has been fortunate to have several teachers that have actively supported a diverse representative educational experience, and I want to see this continue for him and for all students as part of a formal effort by the district. We need to hold parents, students, and faculty accountable for racist, discriminatory, and bigoted comments and behavior by implementing a zero tolerance policy. Our students are our future. No student, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual preference, gender identity, should endure the racism. It is past time for change. I request that this letter be read aloud at the board meeting on the 21st. Let's see. This comes from Kimberly Isaacs, to whom it may concern. We see how hard you work, and as a district team, we see that you have worked tirelessly to overcome these challenges that are a result of lack of federal and state guidance. As parents, I am committed to supporting public education by supporting your efforts to keep your students learning and safe. However, I also believe that the solutions to return to school safely require your urgent support and actions in addressing the social, emotional learning of our students. This cannot be done without an anti-racist framework. Why we collectively mourn the murders of our Black Americans and navigate the path forward, it is absolutely critical to consider the impact of these traumatic modern events and their direct connections to BIPOC, American history, on students of all races. Not only do we need to address the emotional state of students and staff with adequate professional development services, but also need to make curricular and environmental changes that create positive impacts on our children's lives and collective futures. I, Kim Isaac, as a concerned parent to a child in this district, am calling on RBUSD to ensure there's a safe learning environment for every student. I would like to see that our school's priorities be upheld through anti-racist educational practices. This means reviewing hiring practices, prioritizing educational content that represents the true diversity of our communities, and intentionally reviewing each school's approach to learning in order to ensure that equity, inclusion, and anti-oppression are centered. Our community is calling for this district facility and school board to take deliberate anti-racist actions within board and academic communication with parents, students, staff, and faculty, including ethnic studies requirement, anti-racist professional development at least twice per year, no police on campus, funding resources instead, inclusive and diverse teaching, teachers, teaching books, textbooks, art, leadership training for the inclusive representation department chairs, support admin and board of education, removal of mission project requirements and replace with a project focused on indigenous history, improve resources for low income and disadvantaged students, specifically free or low cost access to SAT and ACT prep. We must be proactive in educating our future leaders about the injustices of widespread normalized racism and intolerance of others. Simply making a statement is not enough. Science and research has proven that children that have learned racial bias and facial recognition by 3 months of age, Black children as young as 3 years old have been shown to have significant lower self-esteem based on their own identification of their skin color, which has also been linked to lower academic achievement. Black students are significantly more likely to receive discipline, resulting in removal from class, suspensions, expulsions, referral to law enforcement than their peers, which has been directly linked to incarceration rates. Accountability is one of the only known factors that lead to behavioral changes in people which occupy positions of power. These conversations are not reserved for students of color, but students in predominantly white schools too. You are equally responsible for helping our students build the capacity to understand and confront racism as well, contribute to a society where peace and justice prevail. Your actions serve more than Black and POC students in your school It serves our democracy. At this moment, serving students means openly and loudly affirming your stance as an anti-racist institution, condemning all types of violence against Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the South Bay, offering resources for both education and traumatized individuals, and committing your district to revising how its policies, curricula will be best equipped facilities, staff, and anyone who engages students to meet this requirement. I'm also extremely concerned about your plans for families that do not have the resources to school their children at home due to needing to work, not having money for babysitters, etc. What is your plan? Will the CDC be expanded? Sincerely, Kim Isaac. Thank you to everyone who's written in, and again, to those who wrote in specifically on certain topics. I apologize if you weren't specific. We read. We tried to pick everybody as close as we could to the topic at hand. So we're moving on to. We can have a bathroom break if you'd like. The meeting does not technically need to be extended for 15 minutes. So, but if you'd like, if everybody, I don't know. But if you'd like to, I would just say if you'd like a break, let's just take a 3 or 4 minute break so everyone can go to the restroom.
Do you mind?
No.
You would like to.
Do I mind? Not at all.